Hey, welcome back to another episode of Parker's Pensées. I'm your host, Parker Case, and this is a channel where we explore all the deepest ideas in philosophy, theology, nature, and life. I love thinking about cool stuff, so come think with me. Today's episode is very, very special. I have with me Jordan from iWizard. I was recently on his YouTube channel. It's called iWizard. And we were talking about philosophy and science fiction. And I figured let's just continue the conversation and have him on over here. This guy really knows his stuff. He teaches high school like psychology and philosophy courses and stuff like that. And he just knows the literature in and out. And he knows a lot of philosophers that my analytic friends and myself included will not be as familiar with. Maybe we've heard their names, but we probably haven't read their stuff as much. That'd be more of the continental-y type folks. So I was really glad to have Jordan on to talk about that. We also get into science fiction and fantasy a little bit. That's a recurring theme for me because I am prepping for writing my own science fiction novel. I've been working on short stories over on my Substack, Parker's Ponderings, under a subsection called Sages, Mages, and Wisdom Machines. So check that out if you want to see me learning how to be a science fiction writer and shoehorn in, Trojan horse in a bunch of philosophical concepts and teachings. Jordan's awesome. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. If you like this episode, then you're going to like the episode I did over on his channel with him. We also go into his fantasy book that he's writing with his wife, or has already written with his wife, and he gives a little overview of that. Really, really fun episode for philosophy nerds and science fiction fantasy nerds. If you guys like this podcast, then please consider becoming a Patreon patron. You can find a link in the description or become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, you can listen ad-free by joining whatever it's called over there, like the patron version of Spotify. And if you just want to support me generally, then become a paid subscriber over on Substack. There are a lot of ways that I have commodified myself. So pick one of those, help me keep the lights on, help me buy diapers and dog food and all that good stuff. Enough of that. Let's jump in with Jordan from iWizard.
Yeah, so Jordan, thanks so much for making some time for me here and coming on the podcast.
Anytime, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, this is really fun. We found each other because of Christopher Rocchio, I think, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, it was interesting. I had a really good stream that I was proud of, and I'm sometimes talking on Discord with the guys that are in the Sun Eater Discord, Christopher Rocchio's Discord, and a lot of the fans of Christopher's are fans of my channel, my YouTube channel as well. And I asked them, like, who would you guys want me to have on? And they recommended like 3 people, and you were one of them. And then right when they did that, there was a conversation that came out between you and Christopher that I watched. And then I started just, I started exploring your channel. And I was like, why haven't we talked yet? This is like perfect. This guy does philosophy and science fiction, and he's kind of a bro, and he likes fantasy too. And I figure we had to talk.
Yeah, dude, same here. So I saw some of your stuff, and then we just keep talking about the same stuff and thinking about the same things. You just came out with this fantastic video on Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? I got my shirt on for you.
Nice.
Actually, I got 2 of them because I'm like,
oh, that's the old school. Is that the tattoo? You have a tattoo, don't you?
That's right. And the tattoo's right here.
Oh man.
Yeah, so it's the old school Bob Pepper one. I think it's like maybe the second cover.
Heck
and
yeah.
I just love it. I love philosophy of mind and artificial intelligence and all that stuff. So that book's just right. It's like probably my favorite book. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that. So that's kind of random because I put that on my TBR a while ago, and I kind of set the date to read it right now, not even knowing we were going to do this conversation back when
Perfect.
I set that. So that's really cool. I loved it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for those listening here, this is a podcast where I discuss philosophy, theology, nature, and life. I've been broadening things back out since I finished my 3rd master's degree in philosophy there, going back to things that matter as well, not just like abstruse metaphysical theories and stuff. And so today we're going to be talking about some continental philosophy, probably some science fiction and all that stuff. And I thought Jordan is just one of the perfect guys to talk with. I've reached out to some continental philosophers to get them on to give me book recommendations, and I've got a lot of I haven't had a lot of success with that. So I thought Jordan, you like the continentals, man. You're a continental guy, I would say. Like I think you're widely read, but you will have read more continental philosophy than me, and so maybe you could help me and my analytic folks, my listeners, out with some book recommendations and some, hopefully science fiction too.
Yeah, I'd be totally happy to. I would say I do about half and half continental
Nice.
and analytic. Certainly, my degree in philosophy was not in continental philosophy. There was a general kind of disdain for it in the program that I did, and even when a lot of people don't know this, but when I graduated high school, I was a terrible student in high school. I was playing music, I was in a band. And when I graduated, I just became a mail carrier. So I got into the game late. I started reading philosophy. That's why I quit delivering the mail, because I was so interested in what I was reading. And I said, why am I wasting my life putting the mail in the box? It just wasn't for me. But so what I did was I went to community college, and one of the first classes I took was Introduction to Philosophy. And we got there on the first day, and the professor asked, actually, he had a crazy name. Like, you would think like, a fiction writer couldn't come up with this name for a philosopher. His name was Theodore Bach, Ted Bach. And this was at Three Rivers Community College. And he started out by asking us what we thought philosophy was. And it was like an episode of Community. I don't know if you've seen that show, right? We went around and like everyone was just like, there was this girl in the back who was like emo, like kind of goth. And she was like, had piercings everywhere and dressed in all black. And she was like, I enrolled for this course so that we could learn about, because I'm a Wiccan. And the professor was like, we will not be talking about that at all. And she looked really disappointed, and then she dropped the class. But we all went around, and what we thought we were signing up for was not what we got. Eventually, it basically ended up being a very rigorous deep dive, or I guess you'd call it survey in analytic philosophy. And so we went, it was really just like early modern philosophy, Descartes, Hume, Kant, Paley, William Paley, that is, Aquinas, right? It's very dense, rigorous. We had to memorize the ontological argument and stuff like that and reproduce it like word for word, basically. And so, that was a rude awakening for me, because I was weaned on like Alan Watts. Like when I started reading philosophy, I was doing like beat sort of Zen, like 1960s, like beat hippie counterculture philosophy.
Is that The Art of Motorcycles? Is that him?
No, that's Robert Pirsig, and that's a novel actually that is quite good. I would recommend it. But Alan Watts was this, like beat philosopher who has a doctorate in divinity, and who had a doctorate in divinity, and basically was one of the major mid 20th century expositors of Eastern philosophy. So he was introducing Zen and Taoism and like the different schools of Buddhism. He wrote a book called The Wisdom of Insecurity, Nature, Man, and Woman. All of this sort of like Zen, Shintoism, all of that. He was part of the LSD, the acid tests that the government was doing. So he was one of those guys, like the Jack Kerouacs, the Gary Snyders. He was part of that whole sort of circle. And that's what got me into philosophy originally. And then that course kind of woke me up to say, do you want to take this seriously? This is like sort of fun, interesting, like, coffee table, book about philosophy. Let's get into the serious stuff. And I actually found what was interesting about that class was through learning about analytic philosophy, I realized that I have a very rigorous mind and that I enjoyed analytic philosophy. And it actually wasn't until later that I got into continental philosophy. So, as a philosophy teacher myself, there is no way I would ever teach. I teach an introduction to philosophy class. I teach a film and philosophy course. I would say I teach 70% analytic sort of that style of philosophy. We start with the pre-Socratics, and then we do Socrates, like the Socratic method, and then we do Plato, and then we do like the Republic and the early dialogues, and then we do Aristotle, and then we move into ethics. So we do like what is ethics? So like meta ethics,
Yeah.
utilitarianism, deontology, virtue ethics, Rawls, Nozick, that whole tradition. We do I do a little bit of Burke and Locke, so natural rights theory, and Montesquieu and stuff like that, natural law theory. And then we do modern metaphysics and epistemology, and then philosophy of mind is how we close out the year. So
Nice.
it is, and we do a unit on existentialism as well. It is mostly analytic, classical to modern philosophy and stuff like that. So that is actually my specialty. But in my free time, I have been interested in what's the so-called continental philosophy.
Yeah.
And I guess I would say first that, I guess the distinction between continental and analytic philosophy has always been somewhat suspect and somewhat arbitrary. I don't know if you would agree with that. Insofar as it refers to a way of doing philosophy or an approach to style, I do think a distinction can be drawn. And I do like the approach that analytic philosophy takes, and I think it's good for some things. And I also find tremendous value in so-called continental philosophy. And what initially gravitated me towards continental is that, unlike traditional philosophy, which often starts with abstract axioms or theories, philosophies like, existentialism or phenomenology, on the other hand, these philosophies are into setting aside most of what has kept philosophy going since Plato. Puzzles about whether things are real or whether we can know anything for certain. The idea with existentialism and phenomenology is, let's bracket that for the moment. That is a phenomenology joke there, little Husserl joke there.
Yeah.
And let's acknowledge that any philosopher who asks these questions about, Parker, the ship of Theseus, or simulation theory, or the hard problem of consciousness, or whatever. And I love all these topics, by the way, but existentialists will point out that any philosopher who's grappling with these questions is already thrown. That's a Heideggerian term, is already thrown into a world filled with things, or at least filled with the appearances of things or phenomena. So why not concentrate on the encounter with phenomena? Let's deal with more down-to-earth matters. It's kind of, and I'll leave you with this, and we can talk more about this if you want. It's kind of like what Camus says at the beginning of The Myth of Sisyphus. He says something to the effect of, I've never seen anyone die for the ontological argument. He says something like, whether or not the earth or the sun revolves around the other is a matter of profound indifference. And now I really, truly, as an Enlightenment guy who believes in reason and rational inquiry and science and logic and philosophical consistency, I fully and totally disagree with the notion that whether the earth revolves around the sun or not is a matter of profound indifference. But I do understand the point, the overall point that Camus is making, that there needs to be room in philosophy for different kinds of philosophies that diverge from analytic philosophy. And I know you Parker, are into the Stoic tradition, and you like wisdom literature and wisdom philosophy. So I know you kind of agree that it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be Bertrand Russell or Donald Davidson or Quine or any, you know what I mean? Like that there's room for a philosophy that grapples with what is the nature of the good life, that grapples with what does freedom mean, and what does it mean to inhabit a body, and what is the nature of responsibility, and or even more like genealogical and historical methods like Nietzsche's genealogy of morals, where you're going back in time and you're asking the question, not like prescriptively what using our reason can we say will contribute to human flourishing, but rather, where did our notions about morality come from? What is the origin of that? And so I do think that there's room for those types of questions. And I'll end on this because you asked for a recommendation. What got me into continental philosophy was that these were all excellent prose stylists. So Jean-Paul Sartre won the Nobel Prize in literature. He was basically like an emo hipster, so he rejected that because he didn't want the institution to define him. But like his short stories are fantastic. His autobiography is beautiful. He was a beautiful writer. Camus was a great writer. Martin Buber, Soren Kierkegaard, Nietzsche was one of the great German prose stylists ever, right? And the only reason I know that is because of Walter Kaufmann's translations. So I haven't read, I'm not capable of reading it in the original German. But I'll just say that these continental philosophers are prose stylists. It's Nietzsche writes in these aphorisms and these Dionysian dithyrambs. They'll bring back the Socratic method and they'll do dialectic and back and forth. And Kierkegaard used to insert fiction into his philosophy. Read something like Either Or, which is like, here I'm going to write a bunch of experimental creative pieces about what it's like to live this sort of secular, atheistic, hedonistic life of living for sensual pleasure, or on the other hand, should I pursue a life of Christianity and principle and devotion to God? Either Or is brilliant. No one ever talks about that work, but it's very literary. It's very romantic. The prose is flowing. Anyways, I'm rambling, but that's a little bit a network of reasons that I like continental philosophy, but I would never want to like push analytic philosophy out because I like them both.
Yeah, dude. Oh, that's so good. I could let you talk forever, man. That's so good.
I know that's the problem. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I'm with you. And like you said, I do like the wisdom tradition. And I've kind of, I've always had that high ideal of the philosopher as the wise man of the town. I'm like, dude, if you're a philosopher, that's a high calling. And I would talk to my analytic friends and be like, what are you talking about, man? It's just a profession. Like, no, like we look up to you guys. And I catch this on YouTube sometimes when on Park Notes, I say, hey, I'm a philosopher and theologian. And people are like, how dare you? How could you call yourself that? That's for us to call you after you die. I'm like, no, like I've been trained in this. I publish articles, like I present at conferences and I have to like justify myself. But I'm like, you guys are thinking about it as like, as something to be earned. And the way I've earned it is just going to school and learn from philosophers and kind of be like accepted into the academic philosophy. And they're like, no, that's not. So there's a bunch of different, I've noticed there's a bunch of different conceptions of philosophy going around in the public. And I've started to take some on where I'm like, hey, look, if that's how most people think of philosophy, then I want to embody that also. You know, I want to have a good aphorism. Do I have any aphorisms of my own? Well, I started a notebook and I'm like, I'm going to come up with some aphorisms. Maybe that's like super self-aggrandizing, but I'm not publishing them, but I'm working to be someone who has a wise saying on the tip of my tongue, because that's what people expect a philosopher to have.
Well, it's also that and Nietzsche writes about this in the Genealogy of Morals. It's the idea that there's a lot packed into and contained within an aphorism. An aphorism is in some ways like a meta philosophy, right? I could state some, aphorism to you, and you could go as an analytic philosopher and systematically unpack that. Meaning, there's a lot in there. There's a lot loaded in the kind of aphorisms. There's a lot loaded into a Shakespearean sonnet. But I agree with you. Like, I agree with this romantic notion of the town sage, the town philosopher, someone whose job it is to make sense of things and to talk about the good life, which we really don't talk about anymore. Yeah. In some ways, we're too distracted. And again, I think in some ways, that's what continental philosophy, but especially like existentialism, was trying to bring back, is this more ancient way of doing philosophy. I think it was Jonathan Haidt who once said that the reason that like Aristotelian philosophy, the reason that like virtue ethics and pre-Socratic philosophy and Stoic tradition and stuff like that is so important is that modern philosophy, especially like modern ethics, started talking about philosophy in a way that is very much disconnected from the way that we actually live our lives. I think the point that he was making, he was talking about in The Righteous Mind about deontology and utilitarianism, and how these philosophies treat ethics, the nature of the good, they treat these very serious moral questions and they boil them down to situations that might happen to you once a week, once a month, right? Kant is like, when you're deciding whether or not it would be a good idea to steal this loaf of bread, and all you have to do is first say that, ask yourself, if I universalize my maxim, will it result in a contradiction of conceivability? And does it cancel itself out? Ask yourself, what if everyone stole this loaf of bread, right? And, the ends justify the means and, all of this stuff. And utilitarianism is like, let's perform this intense, complicated philosophic calculus, this like utilitarian calculus about like, if I steal this bread, will it result in the greatest good for the greatest number? And that is like a very inhuman, robotic philosophy. Actually, in Haidt's book, he actually uses the research of Simon Baron-Cohen to place both of those philosophers on the autism Asperger's spectrum. And he basically says that these like logic chopping sort of like top down like theories that you are supposed to like use as a lens to see everything in the world through, they're not enough. So you don't throw them out. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But his point was, someone like Aristotle is talking about what does it mean to be a good person? What does it mean to pursue excellence? What does it mean to fulfill your telos? Like, what sorts of qualities do you have to have, and how do you cultivate them in order to become a virtuous person? And how do you live a life of moderation? That finding the golden mean and all of that stuff. Anyways, my point is, there are, and I know you like the Stoic tradition and stuff like that, these philosophies that talk about character, and not just like, would it be wrong for me to what should I say if a murderer comes to my door and says like, I'm here to kill your sister, where is she? That's likely not going to happen to you, but I do think it's useful to read someone like Aristotle as well, who will tell you, here is how you live the good life, and here is how you try to pursue virtue and excellence. Anyways, again, I'm rambling.
No, dude, it's so good. So in my head, I've got some just like random loops, some random thoughts about the different schools of philosophy, and usually I play the role of like defending whichever one's under attack. I'm like the analytics coming after the Continentals. I'm like, yeah, well, that's just because you guys don't know how to write. You can't write, so you come at the Continentals, and the Continentals start, railing against the analytics, saying they're logic choppers, and it's like, well, that's because you guys don't have any logic. You make up your own words. I kind of see the split as like, depending on the day, I see it as artificial. Sometimes I'm like, nah, dude, the analytics are like, get clear about what you mean. A lot of times they spend too much time on topics or concepts that nobody else cares about at all. And the Continentals take concepts and ideas that everyone cares about and doesn't give you very clear answers. That's kind of how I see it. But I also see the breakdown as like the whole time throughout Western philosophy, at least, there was this wisdom tradition along with the logic, along with the abstruse metaphysical theories. It was still, these guys were really wise and they gave great sayings, great aphorisms all along. And then that split somewhere, and the wise men became gurus, and all the philosophers were like, I'm not like the gurus. I'm not up on a mountain. It's like, well, literally every other wise man went up on the mountain. They just backed up their stuff with arguments as well. Right. And so I started seeing this more and more. And as I've been studying Christ as a philosopher, just thinking about him as a philosopher, I'm like, man, he would give aphorisms when he felt like his crowd, his audience needed an aphorism, and he was giving detailed explanations when he thought they needed those. I'm like, all right, I want to do both. And the one who really helped me see this actually even more than reading the Bible, my Christian friends are all like, no, was Frank Herbert in Dune Messiah. He gives, there's this guy, have you read Dune Messiah?
No, I've only read the first Dune book, and I've read it like 6 times because I taught a fantasy and sci-fi literature course, and I taught it every year along with Lord of the Rings. So that book I've read so many times, and I've read nothing beyond that. In
Dude,
fact,
you
I
gotta,
made the tragic mistake of reading Brian Herbert and Kevin
oh
J.
no,
Anderson's Butlerian Jihad. And
no,
I know it was awful. And I just said, okay, I'm going to
so bad. And
never
like
again.
that's not what Frank meant by the Butlerian Jihad at all. Like
Yeah.
Frank's whole point was like, it's not the AI that's going to get you. It's the humans using AI. And that was his
Yeah.
whole point always about power structures.
Yeah.
And Brian's like, sick, let's make a robot, an evil robot. I'm like, dude, Brian, what are you doing? Did you never talk to your father? But so I won't spoil Doom Messiah for anybody, but
Okay.
there is this one character, his name's Hate, and he's trained as a mentat. So he's the logic chopper. My eyes roll back. Let me give all these calculations to you, analytic philosopher. And then he's also trained as a Zen Sunni philosopher. And the Zen Sunnis are like the ancestors of the Fremen. They're desert folks. And desert's always like wisdom folks, right? It's always like the desert fathers and stuff. So he gives aphorisms. And I'm like, bro, this guy, Frank Herbert, created this perfect philosopher who's able to logic chop and give an aphorism. I'm like, bro, I want to be a Zen Sunni mentat. Like, just having the science fiction concept, for whatever reason, man, I do so much better when I have some kind of science fiction-y concept. Like if I don't want to lift, I'm like, what would Batman do today? I'm like, well, I need to go lift weights because Batman would lift weights. So that's been helpful for me to think about Zen Sunni mentats.
Yeah, I love that. And I would say that's true of the Eastern tradition in philosophy as well. People don't realize that, yes, there's this tradition of wisdom literature. There are these at the heart of, these philosophies were mostly religions as well. So at the heart of Buddhism, there's, the Dhammapada, right? And the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. There are these like aphoristic Zen koans and things like that you're supposed to spend time unpacking and interpreting. But at the heart of the tradition as well, there is an extremely rigorous philosophy that grapples with almost all of the same things that the tradition of Western philosophy does too. So read the Madhyamaka school, read Nagarjuna, right? And his work, extremely rigorous analytic philosophy. Buddhism and Eastern philosophy has its own like continental tradition as well. And folks like Vasubandhu and his Trisvabhava Nirdesha, the treatise on the three natures, which is like basically Schopenhauer.
That's right. Yeah.
So like there's a rich tradition there as well. And I think you're right. These things should be able to live side by side. I love logic. I teach a course at my school called AP Language, 2 large sections of that class. And we go through logical fallacies. We go through rhetoric. And that course is all about how to make arguments without committing logical fallacies, appealing to different rhetorical devices, and being extremely logically consistent and arguing from a set of premises, learning the Toulmin model versus the like Aristotelian classical rhetoric and stuff like that. So, what is deductive reasoning versus inductive reasoning and all of that. So I think we absolutely positively need both. And then there are some things where it's like hard to locate where they stand. So I think the branch of philosophy I personally spend the most time thinking about is probably ethics and political philosophy. So when it comes to ethics, I love to think about how different ethical philosophies interact. What sorts of concerns and problems are different ethical philosophies good at grappling with, and where does each fall short? I definitely agree with Thomas Sowell when he says there are no solutions, only trade-offs. So I'm not someone who thinks there is any one grand unified theory of everything when it comes to like ethics or public policy. I'm more in agreement with George Will when he says that your own views are allowed to be, they should be nuanced. I remember reading one of his last books, and he said that if he had to describe his ethical philosophy, it would be a combination between natural rights theory, so a la someone like Locke, Thomas Aquinas, Hugo Grotius, that sort of thing, along with rule utilitarianism, which makes perfect sense to me. I would actually add in deontology, natural law theory, and virtue ethics as well. So to me, these philosophies are not mutually exclusive. They complement each other. They balance each other out. which is decidedly, Parker, and I'm sure you know this with all your degrees, is not how ethics is normally taught by intro level philosophy professors. The sort of Michael Sandel justice approach to philosophy is to look at all of these different ethical systems, teach students each one as if it's its own universe, and then say, look, you've got to pick one, otherwise you're being philosophically inconsistent.
Well, my like, I'm so deep into philosophy of religion, and so I always look for arguments for God from unification of different aspects.
Yeah.
So I'm like, bro, I mean, if you have theism in the center, then you have all these theories, right? And here's why. And so I'm always like, my analytic friends in their PhD programs are like, bro, you've got to stop doing papers on that, because you need, if you want to apply to PhD, they don't want to hear more about God. So I'm always like fighting myself to be like, don't do it. But that's really a Phil religion type thing, where it's like an abductive argument for God, where it's like, look at all these arguments, right? The argument from so many arguments, and then applying that and saying, look at on theism, you have a unification of different ethical theories, and you have the best of all the worlds. On this other theory, you may have to be bifurcated or pick one or whatever.
Right.
So I'm trained to think like that. So when you say, like, let's take the best of all worlds, I'm like, that makes sense to me, dude.
I love that.
Yeah.
But that's not how it's taught. And it's taught as if by its very nature, in this like a priori definitional sense, something like deontology is a rejection of utilitarianism with a completely different set of axioms that philosophy flows from. And to some degree, that is true, but it also doesn't have to be true. To me, that's the strength of these different philosophies. I look at them more like problem solving tools. And you can actually combine them, right? So, you're working on your Chevy truck, your old Chevy truck, and you need a wrench. Well, it's important that the wrench is a wrench and not a screwdriver, but that doesn't mean you don't need both to fix the car, right? And notice too that with really durable political systems, I would argue, using different tools and relying on differently oriented types of institutions that act as checks on one another, that's actually what makes for a better political system. So think about the US. The founders deliberately designed a system that incorporated elements of different governing styles. You can go back to Plato's Cycle of Regimes and Polybius, but we incorporated elements of democracy, right? Where people get to choose the aristocracy and the monarch. Aristocracy, right, that has checks over the monarch, and a monarch that gets to select people to help interpret the laws that are made by the aristocracy and who has veto power over those laws, right? And then Congress can override the veto if there's enough of a majority. But those are completely different political systems that you would think are mutually exclusive and don't go together, right? But we actually need them for different reasons in different times and places and different situations, right? So, and of course, think about like our monarch only gets to serve as a monarch for 4 or then 8 years and that sort of thing. So we're allowed to be nuanced. And I love what you said about religion. By the way, Parker, this is like totally unrelated, but my brain I have a scatterbrain.
Me too.
You just published a paper.
Yeah, man.
And that's really cool. You published a paper in some philosophy of mind journal.
Yeah, it was the Journal of Artificial Intelligence and Consciousness. Yeah, it was a big one.
Tell me about that. What was that? Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks,
that's
man.
Freaking awesome. Because
Thanks,
I don't think right now you are in a PhD program, right?
No, not
you've
yet.
got all these degrees, but
yeah.
And you're publishing in major philosophy journals. What's that all about?
Oh, I don't know the score on the journal. I just was like, this is good. I looked at the people on the board, and like David Chalmers is on there.
Wow.
Yeah, so Selmer Brings George is a really big AI guy who's a fantastic guy. So I looked at it and I saw a bunch of my podcast guests, and I was like, oh, they're all on the board. That means this is a good journal. I'm just going to jump on there. And it was cool, man. Reviewer 2 was coming at me with some hard stuff. Stuff I thought was unrelated. So I sent back a bunch. I made a couple corrections. I threw in another thought experiment. So if anyone reads the paper, I added something about 3D printed Perry, because I was talking about why looking at structure isn't sufficient for attributing consciousness to AI. It's got the same structure as us. If minds are multiply realizable, if they can be in other material than just carbon, like if you believe in angels or aliens that are intelligent with different anatomy than us, then yeah, it looks like how do we determine? Well, just look at structure. Well, here's a counter argument to that. Here's Perry and dead Perry. Perry is alive, dead Perry is dead, and they have the same structure, and one is conscious and one's not. So he was like, look, there's microstructures and all this biology stuff. So I'm like, that's debatable. But here's 3D printed Perry. He was never alive, but he's got the same structure as Perry, and he's not conscious. If that's possible, then structure is not sufficient. So the whole paper was just a survey of arguments against machine consciousness or puzzles for machine consciousness. Look, if you want to attribute consciousness to an AI system, you have to overcome these arguments or explain why your attribution of consciousness to a machine doesn't fall prey to them. So, dude, it was awesome. That's like my AI and my Phil Mind publication. So if anyone's like, well, how come you call yourself a philosopher or AI, theorist or something like, well, I'm not a theorist, but I think about these things. I have a published article. I have one published article in a theology journal. So I'm like, if I don't do any more, at least I have one in theology, one in philosophy.
I don't know what else you would have to do to be called a philosopher. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
I feel sometimes I feel like some of these people would have gone back and like grabbed Socrates by the throat and been like, you don't have a PhD. You haven't done a 3-year postdoc.
Yeah.
It's like, give me a break. Like you run a philosophy podcast, you write philosophical sci-fi short stories, you're publishing in philosophy journals. Give me you have master's degrees in philosophy and you are a philosopher.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. A lot of this is probably driven by my wanting to be accepted as a philosopher. So that's goofy, but yeah, so it's super cool. It's like my theology article was like the cherry on top of my 2 theology master's degrees. This one's like the cherry on top of my philosophy degree. I pulled in a lot of my podcast guests' work and stuff I learned in my classes, and I'm like, let's put this all together, and this is like what my education was. Here's what I learned. So it was fun, man. Super fun to get that in there. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up.
Congrats.
Yeah. Well, dude, there's this getting back to like meta philosophy or philosophy of philosophy. That's actually a debate in itself, but there's this style of philosophy I wanted. So I wanted those articles published because I want to do academic philosophy, but I also want to be a public philosopher. Like we've been saying this whole time, like, dude, I want to do it all. I just like philosophy. I like theology. I want to talk to everyone, academics. I want to talk
to
so lay
important,
folks.
Parker.
Yeah,
and
dude.
That is one of the reasons, I'll keep this brief, that I admire people like Carl Sagan, because people would criticize him and be like, he's not a real scientist. Well, he actually absolutely positively was a professor and a real scientist who did a lot of important things. I believe he was working on like discovering whether or not it was possible for there to be life on Venus and stuff like that. But anyways, it's really, really important for public communicators of science and philosophy to exist, for people who are not so, excuse the phrase, high on their own farts, right? To go out and talk to the public on their own terms in ways that they can understand.
Yeah.
And that changes people's life. Like scientific, philosophical literacy, I think is really important. Like, for example, I've been saying this for years, like, why don't we require a philosophy class in American high school education? Like, I think you have to take one philosophy class in Canada to graduate from high school. Why don't we do that in America? Like, students in America are woefully innumerate and illiterate when it comes to, like, for example, we should require everyone to take a statistics class. We should require everyone to take a course on logic, or if not logic, at the very least, an intro to philosophy class that has a unit on logic. Anyways, I totally agree with you that I almost think it's a philosopher's responsibility to speak, as Socrates did, walking around Athens, in his sandals or whatever, like, debating people, challenging power, like asking the tough questions and speaking to people in a way that they can understand. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, dude. So that's going back to that like high view of philosophers that I have, where I'm like, when we have big policy debates, I would love to see like a good philosopher up there who isn't just an egghead, but like, yes, they have published papers, and so when someone says, "What do you know about this?" Say, well, you can see my academic work if you want more, but who's personable and can actually like move the conversation forward. Here's something about logical fallacies. I think you have to really understand them in order to play that card. Because if you're like, hey, that's you're poisoning the well, and you're debating with someone, like, what does that mean? And you're like, it means that's not good, you shouldn't do that. And they're like, well, explain to me, like, why is that bad? I didn't take the logic course you took. It's like, well, here's why poisoning the well is bad. It's because you're making it so anything that comes after that is already tainted. It's already bad because you've dropped a bomb already on it. Like you've done something wrong here. This is why it's fallacious. This is why it's not correct reasoning. Just because this is true doesn't mean this and this and this is false. So just being able to like explain them. So some philosophers I know are like, I don't teach logical fallacies anymore to my students. And I'm like, well, I understand, because you don't want them just dropping that, because sometimes they're valid. It's they're informal fallacies because there's no problem with the form of the argumentation. It's just it's not good reasoning. But you're like, these guys are such like eggheads.
Well, you have to
like,
teach them that there's a difference between truth claims and policy decisions, and that's not hard to do. So take a logical fallacy like appeal to popularity. I tell my students this: it is not a fallacy to say, we put it up for a vote, and 51% of the population believes in astrology. And so my administration is going to create a department of astrology. That is not a logical fallacy. That is you saying, I am going to pursue this policy decision that makes me as a politician more popular, and I'm going to make my constituency happy because a majority of them believes in astrology.
Yeah.
Okay. It is a logical fallacy to say that because people believe that astrology is true and can predict the future, because people believe in that, therefore it is true.
Right.
And students are like, it's really easy to explain this to them. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But you're right. There's a, it's not a fallacy, but it's kind of it's a debating tactic called blinding with science. And like if you go up there and you're having a debate with someone about climate change or whatever, my wife's actually a climate scientist, and a very like moderate, rational person.
Appeal to authority.
Yeah, right. And she doesn't do that, right? But like if you're having a debate with someone about that, and you've got the person who doesn't believe that there are anthropogenic drivers to climate change, and there's a person who believes that there is, that human beings have some effect on anthropogenic warming. It is often the case that you can go up there as the climate scientist and just say a bunch of domain-specific jargon gobbledygook, and that person is going to cross their eyes and sort of shrink out and walk out of the debate because they just literally can't respond to the gobbledygook that you've just said to them. So I do think that it is on us to speak to people where they're at and find ways of communicating things that don't entirely always need to rely on the jargon. Or we should be able to say, this is circumstantial ad hominem. And let me tell you what circumstantial ad hominem is. You just argued that the priest who's arguing against abortion is wrong because he would say that because he's a priest and he's a lackey for the Pope. Okay, but that doesn't speak to whether or not abortion is morally correct to do or not correct to do. So I ask my students, what would you have to do to defeat the priest if you're someone who believes in the pro-choice argument? Okay, well, you're going to have to like literally stick to the issue and refute his claims. One way that I put it to them is, think about it this way. If you were writing an essay, okay, and you were, let's say you're pro-choice, and you're writing an essay about why the pro-choice position is the right position. I don't know. Your perspective is, a fetus isn't a human life or something like that, and that it becomes one down the line. I don't know what your argument is, but maybe it's that. Would bringing up a priest named Jerry be an effective argument for you to make the case that the pro-choice position is the correct one? No. Like, would you devote a paragraph to a priest who lives in Western Massachusetts whose name is Jerry? No. You wouldn't bring him up at all, because that wouldn't be that's not a claim. That's not even evidence to support any claim. It's not data. It's not anything. So if you put it like that, it's very easy for them to see that, like, this doesn't help you defeat the priest at all.
Yeah.
You cannot just say, you would say that because you're X, right? Oh, you're against affirmative action. You would say that because you're a white guy. Okay, well, you haven't addressed whether or not affirmative action works. Is it fair from like a justice perspective? You've just evaded that, and you've relied on identity politics. And ordinarily, and it is so easy to communicate this to students. They get it, but you have to speak about it in the right way.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what I that sounds like the right way to do it, man. You're teaching them understanding. You're saying, here, you're going to understand what these things mean. And I understand in philosophy, we need shorthand. Like, we can't go around always saying like the theory of knowledge. It's like epistemology, or epistemologically speaking, X, Y, or Z. But when someone says, hey, what's that word? You need to be able to like accordion that back out to explain that to them if you actually understand it.
And you should be able to explain what that word is if you're using it, you know?
That's and there's times like where I'm like, dude, I'll explain to my wife, and a lot of times I just make her listen. I'm like, I'm so sorry, but it's part of my like active recall. It's how I learn. So we'll go for a walk, and I'm like, all right, I just read this paper. I don't actually know what this word means, but let me try to use it and try to explain it. Like, I do know how to use it right. It's just I have a tenuous grasp on it, so I need to get around it and talk through it. And oh wait, it just clicked. That's what it means. Or I need to go back and read it again, right? But if I can't explain it, maybe I know when to use it, but I don't understand it, right? And I don't have wisdom. I don't know when to rightly apply it, maybe, or something like that, you know? So I always see this like dichotomy between wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Right? Knowledge is like knowledge is really notoriously hard to say what it is. Whatever knowledge is, wisdom is the proper application of that, and then understanding is like a deep, intimate grasp where you can connect it to the rest of the world, you know? Right. And it's that understanding that I think that's what, like, I want to see philosophers who are like men and women of understanding. So I have this anecdote for you. I think it might be apocryphal, but I choose to believe in it. There's this philosopher, Sidney Morgenbester, and he's like, if you studied under him, then you know he's awesome, but like no one else knows about him at all, except for this one maybe apocryphal story where he's talking with J.L. Austin. And J.L. Austin did How to Do Things with Words, and he was like the big proponent, one of the big proponents of speech act theory, which is crazy, and it's really good stuff. But big logic guy, big philosophy of language guy. So Morgenbester is like messing with him one time. It's like, hey man, I know how to get a negative from two affirmatives. And he's like, what? No, you can't do that. And he's like, well, let's debate it. Let's get together and I guarantee you I can do this. So they get together, and they're in front of like a crowd of friends or whatever. And J.L. Austin's going through all the logic on language. And he's like, look, you can use two negatives to get an affirmative. Sure. I'm not going to the party. And he's going through all of it. And he's like, but here's why you can never get a negative with two positives. It doesn't make any sense. And so he lets Sidney Morgenbester lets J.L. Austin go through this whole rigmarole. And at the end, he leans back in his chair and he goes, yeah. And it's like, bro, that is so wise. Like, he just got a negative from two positives and just totally trolled him in the thing. So I'm like, that is also philosophy.
That's hilarious. But I hope that philosopher knew how to respond and knew how to talk about like connotation versus denotation, and that the yeah doesn't literally mean that, but it's understood like in our linguistic community that when you say that, you're being dismissive of. I hope a philosopher that intelligent would be able to explain that that's not, you can't just break that yeah comment down into like syllogistic logic necessarily.
Right. Because there's more to it than that, right? Like there's and that's just what it gets me, dude. I love that. That's like that's the wisdom literature, the wisdom tradition sneaking back into the analytic side of things. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's so true. Like, people like I know you probably would not agree with a philosopher like this, but the the Sam Harrises of the world, the Richard Dawkinses of the world, the Neil deGrasse Tysons. Again, a lot of these guys have their
Trying to
goofy
trigger me here.
moments.
Yeah.
The Carl Sagans, right? That Cosmos series and his books, Pale Blue Dot and Cosmos, and Demon Haunted World. Those books changed my life.
Hmm.
So I do think it is important that we have public thinkers, public intellectuals that can explain these things, because there are so many fallacies circulating around. And I like to joke with my AP seniors that in college we used to play a game where we would watch political debates. Oh, speaking of, there's a presidential debate. I think it's tomorrow, but we used to do this in college, is that we would you would drink every time you heard a logical fallacy. You'd have to convince your buddies that you had heard a logical fallacy. It was great, and it was so much fun. But it was, because you go on social media, you talk to people in the public, and I'm not trying to be an elitist here, but there are fallacies just everywhere. And so when I teach my students these different fallacies, whether it's as you say, a formal logical fallacy like affirming the consequent, or an informal logical fallacy like, I don't know, straw man or something like that, I like to rank order them in terms of the ones I think that are committed most frequently in public discourse. Or even if they're not formal or informal logical fallacies, but they're like statistical or social science, like laws, whatever, like disparate outcomes don't imply disparate treatment. In other words, inequality of outcome doesn't imply inequality of opportunity, right? So like the argument that, 76% of teachers in the US are female, therefore there's systemic oppression against males. Does the fact that there's a disparity in that field imply that men are oppressed by women? Right? Or like 92% of the prison population is male. Does that imply that men are systemically oppressed because they fill up the prisons? Or is there a way of explaining why that disparity exists? Right? So I tell them things like disparate outcomes don't imply disparate treatment. Disparate outcomes are an opportunity to look more closely and see if anything naughty is happening, basically. And so it's stuff like that. It's being able to communicate that, and I think that is just incredibly important. And I worry, and maybe you could tell me this, Parker. I worry. Tell me if this is right. I worry that philosophy and the other humanities disciplines are going by the wayside. I worry that there's less and less funding for them at any given university. And to some degree, you could argue that's their fault, right? Disciplines like English are failing to capture the imaginations of young people, and things like that. You could also blame the corporate sector and say, back in the 50s, if you had a degree in art history, you could get hired by like a big major national bank, right? But we don't do any of that anymore. And increasingly students are shying away from ditching the humanities. And what's scary about that for philosophy is there are a lot of junk fields in the humanities. Philosophy is not one of them. Philosophy majors score high on LSATs. Philosophy majors are capable of practically doing anything. They can work for artificial intelligence, machine learning. They become, heck, in my undergrad, we had a program called, it was called Philosophy, Politics, and Law. And it was preparation to go to law school, right? And so anyways, my point is, and philosophy majors usually have high IQs, et cetera. Do you worry about, I know this is your interview, not mine, but do you worry about what's happening to philosophy? Do you feel like it's receding into the background?
Yeah, man. I also am in the Christian world, and in the Christian world, I think it's going even more quickly, which is scary because that was supposed to be our stuff. We were supposed to we were holding down the fort for a long time. And Christians, there was like this big anti-intellectualist movement and fundamentalism, and then a pushback with progressivism and liberal Christians. And there was a sweet spot of evangelicals before that meant voting for Trump. It meant we are culturally affirming, and yet we hold to the fundamentals of the faith as well. and we want to go reach people. I actually wanted to recommend an evangelical to you who is like a Carl Sagan type person. His name's Francis Schaeffer. And a lot of like Christian philosophers are like, I love Francis Schaeffer. I got into philosophy because of him. And then I picked apart all of his arguments because they went like super rigorous. And they're like, yeah, here's why what he says isn't right or this or that. But dude, you can find some videos. He's got those weird like knickerbocker pants or whatever, where they're like all pulled up and you can see his socks. Just a goofy character, but I mean, a really wise person and really fun to listen to. But he's like that kind of Carl Sagan-esque type dude who is doing public philosophy and theology, talking about big issues that actually matter, which is super cool. But that's like part of the evangelical tradition. So all that to say, evangelicals also gave up on the life of the mind, and they're like,
Yeah.
we don't need that. And some of it I think is driven by politics. They see the Republican senators who are like, we don't need those humanities. If you're a philosopher,
Right.
you can't even feed a family of 4 a pizza can. They're like, why'd you pick on the philosopher? Like, there's so many goofy ones. Why are you picking on philosophy? That just makes you look so stupid.
I know.
You're picking on the best degree, like the only remnant of the humanities. You're grabbing that and saying stupid. Like, there's this thing called the trivium, dude. Like, nowadays we say don't be so trivial. And it's like trivial used to mean according to the trivium, which is logic, grammar, and rhetoric, the first 3 of the 7 liberal arts. You're like, that's just so American of us. We're so pragmatist, dude. And that's our great philosophy. You know, that's what we have. We have Jonathan Edwards and the pragmatists, and like Americans are just so pragmatic, and
That's so true.
they're also so quick. We're also so quick to say everyone's stupid. You're like,
I
no,
know.
you're stupid. You're all stupid. It's not them. You're the dumb one.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing when I always stray away from politics because I just see that. I'm like, dang, everyone's real dumb, huh?
Yeah.
And it's just frustrating, man.
Well,
Yeah.
tell me, Parker, then, because since you brought it up, I think it's actually really a good topic. You were talking about public communicators of theology and Christian belief and evangelical
Yeah.
philosophy. So I wrote down Francis Schaeffer. I'll check him out. I know there's a guy named William Lane Craig.
Yeah, he's an
and
apologist. Yeah.
Stephen C. Meyer, and then there's one other guy that I believe is a philosopher who is, and I'm talking about people who have made their careers making arguments for making teleological, rational arguments, different arguments for the existence of God. There's one other guy that's really popular. Who else? Who else would you recommend?
I'm trying to think. So my whole project with this podcast is trying to platform people who aren't William Lane Craig, because he gets all the play and he's very good, but he's got a particular view. And I study Christian theology, and a lot of his views are like, uh-oh, dude, you are using an ancient heretic and calling it something else in order to make your argument. And that's not great. So dude is stupid smart, like really, really smart. But I'm also like, hey, there's a bunch of people doing work in here. So I want to find you and I want to talk about your paper here on the channel. So this whole channel is like a history of here's who I think you should be reading. So I've been straying away more and more from public apologetics lately.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those guys are popularizers, and some of them don't understand the arguments underneath. And I don't know. I don't want to be uncharitable, but I like to look at the philosophers who are writing the papers rather than the apologists who are taking it second, third hand.
Yeah, there's a delicate balance because sometimes, and I have found this to be true, and it's not always true, so I don't mean to overly generalize, but sometimes the people writing the papers in journals that no one ever reads, what is it, 80% of humanity papers are never cited.
Yeah.
Sometimes those aren't the best people sometimes those are the most abstruse, sort of tangled pretzel logic people who will get up and do these talks that are indecipherable and that sort of thing.
I've learned that on the podcast as well. I'm like,
yeah, and sometimes they're just not the best communicators because and part of it is a strength. There are people like me who are generalists and who are able to speak at a level of broad generalization. I speak in terms of intellectual history, and I'm not afraid to give you a genealogy of history or neatly intellectually periodize history in a way that it makes sense to people. But some academics are so precise
Most of them, yeah, they're
that they're
like, you
the
can't say that.
actually guy, right?
Yeah,
If I
yeah,
make an argument about, the romantic period, they'll say actually it wasn't
yeah.
called the romantic period until the late Victorian period. They wouldn't have even thought of themselves that way. And it's like, guys, I'm trying to communicate like these really important historical things to people that don't even know what the romantic period is. And I'm introducing these thinkers and like chill out, right? But I think that kind of stops them up, that kind of self-consciousness, that kind of pedantic, rigorous, exacting, sort of assiduous nature that they have prevents them from speaking elegantly to normal people. And that can
Yeah.
be a problem too.
Well, so that's another part of the podcast where I'm like, sometimes I just have to play the stooge. Sometimes I have to be the dummy and be like, what do you mean by that? Like what do you just pretend I don't know what you're saying here? And sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't let on as much as I know. Sometimes I'm actually dumb, and my audience are like, did you really not know that? I'm like, hey, look, guys, I don't know everything. Like, I want to know everything in the philosophy of mind. I would love to be but that's a whole field. Like, you can't know everything in that. That is much different than the philosophy of free will. I don't ever touch ethics or metaethics ever. But sometimes I'll have someone on and I'm like, okay, like, let me just stumble in this. And a lot of my audience members are like, dude, thanks for asking that. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I looked really dumb asking that
No,
because
that's called
but it's like,
epistemic humility, Parker,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that
I
actually
like
makes
that.
you a
That sounds
good
better.
person, not a phony. Like, that's really, really important, and I think it ties to the fact that increasingly we're expecting people to be generalists. In fact, I'm sure you would appreciate this. There's a philosophy paper by Harry G. Frankfurt called "On Bullshit." It
Yeah,
got really
he turned it
popular.
into a
It's
little book.
hilarious the fact that he published a book called On Truth, and no one read it, but everyone read On Bullshit. And it was partly his fault. His publishers like made it into this little like coffee table,
Yeah,
this little chat
I have
book.
it over there right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's this pretty little cloth bound thing that looks all fancy, and then you like get up close to it and it says "On Bullshit," and it's a swear, and so it's got this kind of novelty, and it sells well around Christmas time. But it's a great essay, and of course, his argument is that there are truth tellers, people who try to be honest. We all lie, but people who try really hard, do the best they can to try to be honest, right? We all engage in self-deception. We all have defense mechanisms that we put up, but there are some people that try to be honest. I like to think I am one of those people, but maybe I'm wrong. We're also delusional. And then he says there are people who are liars, so people who lie. And those are people who know what the truth is and who deliberately conceal the truth. And they have to know what the truth is in order to then cover it up and say the opposite of what's true. And then, of course, the whole point of his book, his thesis is that then there are bullshitters. And these are people who don't care what's true. And they're the most dangerous of all. And this book started selling really well again when you had the Biden and Trump thing. And I'm sure it's still selling really well because of that. Are public figures who are just constantly bullshitting to gain power. But his point was that, bullshitters are the most dangerous ones of all because they don't have to pay regard to the truth. They just can say whatever they want to sway impressions, to gain power, to generate pathos or whatever. And at least liars have to know what the truth is in order to say the opposite. They pay respect to the truth, but then they cover it up. So that's much better than being someone who just spews a bunch of nonsense to get their way in the world. And at the end, he asks this great question, which is, why is there so much bullshit? And he says, part of why there's so much bullshit, and this touches on what you were saying, is because we live in a culture that expects us to know everything about everything.
Yeah.
When, police shootings becomes a thing, everyone's an expert on that. When there's Israel, Gaza war, everyone knows everything about that. Ukraine, everyone knows everything about that. When there's COVID, everyone's an epidemiologist.
Yeah.
And we're all expected to just be able to, we're all just these brilliant, autodidacts. And the thing is that people aren't. They're busy. They have families. That's not even an insult. We can't extend ourselves that way. We don't have enough bandwidth.
Yeah.
And so, and I like the idea of being a Renaissance man, someone who like dips into a lot of different things and can speak in general terms. But boy, are we expected to have a comment on everything,
Yeah.
to virtue signal about everything, to have a sort of fully formed opinion. And of course, the danger of that is once we've stated that opinion, the way that identity works is we are loath to abandon that opinion because we've built our identities around it. You see this with like scientists who believe in completely debunked theories, who will cling doggedly to that theory
It's their
because
baby. Yeah.
it's sunk cost fallacy, right? It's
Mm.
like I can't abandon it now. That's like I'm that theory guy.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah.
Well, and that could go the other way too, where it's like, what if we just praise people who gave up on their theories and we're like, hey, you know what, you're right. Like if that were to become the norm, then people would be like,
That's
you know what I
it.
mean? Like, look at
That's
that guy. That guy actually gave up. That was his life's work, and he acknowledged that he was wrong. Like, holy cut! Like, I think Frege did that when Russell gave him a paradox and was like, "Hey, dude, surprise!" And he's like, crap, I have to redo this." Like, yes, all of us. This is very good. This is a good thing to hold up. The bullshit thing is funny. I think someone just sent me a paper on why ChatGPT is all bullshit. Because it's autoregressive text generation. It's actually not seeking the truth. And you're like, oh, well, then that is kind of the definition of bullshit, because it's just spewing something to sound right.
It has a job to do.
And
It's
it's
to give you
literally
this large chunk of text.
yeah. What's the 90 percentile best next word to it's not like what's true, what's the fact. And you can
Right.
see that when it cites sources and it makes them up and you're like, oh, all right. But so yeah, I think that is like actually very applicable today, because so many, well, getting back to the pragmatist thing, man, so many people will be like, you should use AI for your videos. You should use AI for your thumbnails. You should use AI for your titles. And I'm like, you guys, I've worked very hard at this for a long time. When I have success, at least on Park Notes, that feels very good for me. I have studied the algorithm and I've studied how to make videos. If I were to offload all this stuff to a robot and it does better than me, I'm going to be upset. I have no understanding of why that video is doing well. It's because some robot did everything for me. And so like my love for humanities and like my Christian humanism is like, I can't, dude. The more people push me on and try to sell me on AI, the more I'm like, I don't think so, man. I'm gonna go the other. Like I started using a straight razor because I'm like becoming a Luddite. It's pretty wild.
No, it's okay because, and here's where continental philosophy comes into it. Kierkegaard, I forget what book this is. I think it might be Either Or, but it could be. It's not Sickness Unto Death. It might be his journals. Anyways, he has this great quote about deciding that he's going to live a life of difficulty on purpose. He's going to pursue what is hard, not what is easy. And he's going to put his entire being into pursuing what is hard, almost for the sake of it being hard. And I know that sounds wrong, but I'll give you an example of this.
I wrestled my whole life, dude. That's what all my coaches told me. That nonstop. That's all I hear. So when someone says the opposite of that, I'm like, what do I do with you? So when someone affirms that, I'm like, yeah, that sounds right to me. Since I was in first grade, everyone's told me choose the hard path.
There are real consequences. You begin to outsource parts of yourself that used to be competent and powerful, and you outsource it. I'll give you an example of this. My wife and I took a vacation to England, Ireland, and Scotland, and it was like over 2 weeks, and we spent the money and we had all this time because we're both teachers and we have summers off, and we just went out there. And yeah, we made like an itinerary. We had a little notebook, a little Parker style notebook of an itinerary of things we wanted to do, restaurants we wanted to go to, places that we wanted to see. Oh, we want to go to Sligo to see W.B. Yeats's grave and all that. But what we did was we said, we're not using GPS the whole time we're here. So we flew into Dublin first. We just rented a car. We took the trip. We had maps. We came with maps, and we just used the maps, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Was it a little harder? Yes. Did it feel sometimes like it was inconvenient? Yes. Did we have to pull over sometimes and spread the maps out on the dashboard? Yeah. But it was great, Parker. It was great. We felt more connected to the land. We
That's what I was going to
felt
say. Yeah, you have to learn the
felt
names of the streets, and you have to
that's
know
right.
if you don't hit that roundabout, the next one it's 30 miles or 50 miles, 80 miles to the
Yes.
next one. Yeah.
We added an element of critical thinking to our trip. It was a great puzzle.
Mm.
And at times, yeah, it wasn't convenient. It's like, yeah, we're hungry. It's 6:15 and we can't find the restaurant. Shit.
Yeah.
You know, what are we going to do? Sorry, I don't know if you do swears on your podcast, but
Well, we said bullshit like 1,000 times, so
okay.
I think we're good by now.
But it was really worth it, and I felt human, and I want to be someone who's capable of reading a map. I have students who don't look up ever from their phones, and their parents drive them around. They don't even know where they live.
Yeah.
They don't look at the houses that are passing them by. And we've constructed a society that is making it easier and easier to be completely and totally dependent and useless. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox.
You're
but,
on your Philip K. Dick streak, dude. This was what you talked about in the video. It's so good. I do want to talk about that, especially because it's the background. Before we get there, the choose what's hard. The people who talk about that now are Jocko Willink and former Navy SEALs. I love Jocko Willink, but there's a lot of other dudes
I
who
do too.
they kind of caricaturize themselves, and you're like, all right, dude, calm down. You don't always have to be running, but you don't see a ton of that in the philosophical world anymore. I mean, you're saying it started with Kierkegaard. That's awesome.
Oh,
That's
yes.
like super
Kierkegaard.
cool.
Good
Yeah,
job.
right. Yeah, thanks, man. I got one right. But I mean, I think that's in the Transcendentalists too, right? Where they're like, it's not just about going out into nature and bringing crystals with you and having a butterfly land on you. I mean, Thoreau like went and built a house and stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think this is even very relevant now. There was a debate that became prominent. It was when I don't know if you remember this guy Andrew Yang, and he was running for president. Nice guy, interesting person,
stuff, right?
very thoughtful. He was writing all about AI and technology, and he was writing about I forget what it is, the fourth industrial revolution or whatever. And he was talking about, trucking is like the number one job in the majority of states in America. And we're on the precipice of self-driving trucks. And this is going to put all these men out of work. And not to get political, because I really do like that guy. He's just like a nice person and a solid guy, I think. But as far as politicians go, but one debate that this gave rise to was the question of what is work worth, right? Yeah. What will happen to us if we become a society where AI does all of our work for us? And we get to this place where the majority of people are staying home all day and getting a UBI check. And the sort of techno-optimists, the utopian techno-optimists are like, what we'll have is finally we'll be freed from the oppressive tyranny of having to go to work and the division of labor where we have to do some demeaning task all day long and sort widgets into this bucket at the widget factory. And what this will give birth to is a new age of flourishing, and people will stay home and they'll make podcasts and they'll write novels and they'll do interpretive dances and they will like read great books, and we're going to have this just gleaming utopian like post-scarcity society. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, that is not what is going to happen, because people get dignity from work. People with the UBI check are going to stay home. They're going to watch porn. They're going to masturbate. They're going to smoke weed all day. They're going to
be on TikTok, dude. Like it's
be on TikTok scrolling.
Yeah.
They're going to sleep in every day. They're going to become alcoholics. And we're going to become this, and it's going to usher in this sort of, not to sound like I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but a biomedical security state in which we become extremely fat and dependent. I mean, this isn't like even on PC, right? This is what Wall-E was about.
I was just going to say Wall-E, like if anything, Wall-E taught us this. Yeah. Dude.
I mean, but so I'm like deeply skeptical of it. I feel like you were trying to steer this in another direction, and I brought it right back
No,
to AI.
no,
What were we
that's good.
talking about?
That all that's good, dude. On one note on that is that people have noted recently that the actual robotics side of AI is a lot harder to crack than the chat models. And like
Right.
after 2017 and Attention Is All You Need, this big paper that Google put out, transformer neural nets blew up, right? And
Yep.
some people are talking about like there's we're reaching a point of diminishing returns, which hopefully, dude, I really hope so. But it looks like they're able to do the humanity stuff better than we are, and we're going to still be folding our laundry and doing all the work that we thought the robots were going to do to free us. So it's like, crap, dude, you took my art from me and you left me with all the crap work. Like, dang it.
Right. People thought that AI was going to be great because it was going to replace menial labor, and it was going to replace the jobs that are inherently or intrinsically sort of repetitive and soul deadening and ennui producing and boring. And what it instead is going to do is replace white collar jobs.
Yeah.
It's going to replace lawyers. It's going to replace people that used to have to like sift through briefs all day and do research for the big lawyer.
The coders who made them, you know, the graphic designers who did all the promo work for them, like crazy. It's actually made me value like the menial jobs much more. Like I have this external drain tile around my house, and it's a constant nightmare, dude. It's always flooding. And I found out I have to dig down 8 feet, and I'm like, I need a ditch digger. I want someone who's skilled at this, who can do this in 4 hours, where it would take me 24 hours.
Right.
I need that. I need someone to trim my giant trees. And I'm like, I need someone with skill and wisdom who's going to cut this down and know where it's going to fall. And this whole time, everyone's like, whoa, cutting a tree. Like, so no, I need someone who knows trees, dude. I need someone who has wisdom in reality. Like, I'm a YouTuber, man. I make YouTube. Like, I can read books. To me, that's easy. And talking in front of people is easy. But I need wisdom with knowing how to care for my property. You know what I mean?
That's right. What is it Nietzsche said? There's more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy. I'm sure you're not a big admirer of Nietzsche's. Neither am I, actually.
Like the stash, everyone can I'm like, dude, this is a handlebar mustache. He did not have one of these.
No, that's not a Nietzsche mustache. It just isn't. He had the walrus mustache, which goes way over the lips and just pours down. Like he had this sort of Prussian military general mustache. But and by the way, I've heard this thing of like, we're eventually AI is going to make it so we don't have to do the laundry. Guys, for anyone watching at home, you already don't have to do the laundry. It's called a washing machine. It literally does the laundry for you. It's a dishwasher. It is a dishwashing machine. Putting the laundry into the washing machine is not doing the laundry. People used to have to scrub it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
There's so much, dude, it's my Luddite stuff coming through, but there's so much like wisdom that's been lost even in that. If you would go back and talk to a woman who washed clothes with one of those racks, she could tell you all about different fabrics, how to wash them. She would know ins and outs of getting blood out of them. That's just gone. That's just not here any longer. Same thing with like boot makers, like people who used to make boots by hand, all these different things where you're like, holy crap, dude, thousands and thousands of years people have taught each other all the way down. I know this because wrestling hasn't changed much. Like there's different stuff, but a lot of the same principles that we learn, they've come back from Greece. So I'm like, that's pretty cool. But a lot of the other skills, like we just have lost them, or some of them just were invented in the Industrial Revolution and now they're gone. So we had them for like 250 years or whatever, and now they're gone. Like just a lot of wisdom's been gone. And it's really sad if you think about it.
That's right. And I think part of the danger of this is every civilization needs to have a set of inherited traditions and wisdom. Can you imagine how hard life would be if we had to, I'll give you an example from Burke in terms of inherited wisdom. If we had to think about what ingredients to use in all of the dishes that we make for ourselves.
Yeah.
There was a time that is a long, it's kind of a Chesterton's fence thing. Like beware of tearing down that fence. You might be ripping out something that is totally vital and that you really need to have. for a flourishing society. Yeah.
There's something too, like, there's a lot of movements to go back and we need to have a stay-at-home wife now. I need my wife to stay at home, and my wife is staying at home now. But I'm thinking about it more and more, and I'm like, I mean, she wanted to do that. I'm not making her, but in past societies where that was more popular, it wasn't my wife staying at home by herself trying to learn how to care for a baby. It was her mom, probably my mom, the whole
Correct.
society, and it was like
The
this.
longhouse.
And they learned from, yeah, right. They
Yes.
learned from theirs, and they learned from theirs, and they'd be like, your child is colicky. And you're like, well, how do you know that? I've dealt with every child
That's
in this
correct.
tribe. Your child is colicky. Let me help you get this child to sleep.
That is
And
correct.
for us, we're like these modern folks stuck in our cubicles, and we're like, let me figure out all of life's problems.
Oh
by
my
myself.
gosh, from scratch. We're going to
Yeah.
watch a YouTube video to learn how to make spaghetti. No, it's like in your grandmother's bones.
Yeah.
Like it is like ancestral memory. Like she knows, like, let her teach you how to do it. Let her teach you the exact, like, precise recipe.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, especially as we become, there's a journalist named David Goodhart, and he wrote a book called The Road to Somewhere. And it was all about, and he was writing this around the time of the Trump election, because he was talking about, like, answering this question of, like, why is this happening? Why is there this, like, sort of native populism? Why is this? And he makes this distinction between somewhere people and anywhere people. And he talks about these new cosmopolitan elites, these anywhere people who have a mobile soul, who have what's that?
The no roots, right? They can pick up
Who
and
have
go
no
anywhere.
roots.
Yeah.
Who sample. Imagine the sort of, like, you know, like the apartment dwelling, like, Brooklynite who takes the gap year and then travels and then goes and studies at some university halfway across the country and then lives in Brooklyn. And every night they sample from a different cuisine, from a different place in the world. And they are anywhere people. They have a set of portable skills that enable them to thrive, even despite what Joseph Schumpeter called the incessant mutations and revolutionary upheavals of a globalized technocratic capitalism, meaning that they have this sort of knowledge and skill set that enables them to, like, live anywhere. They're not somewhere people who value memory and generational continuity and roots and place and home. I'm not talking about, like, blood and soil and these sort of, like, scary aspects of it. I'm talking about people who value home and place. And a lot of that is in the American tradition. We're not all just frontiersmen, right? Very much baked into the American essence, the American persona is the idea of Dorothy, who says there's no place like home. There's the idea of, who's Jimmy Stewart's character from It's a Wonderful Life?
My wife knows I try to avoid those movies.
Who finds that he belongs exactly where he is. So I think that's a part of it too. I think we need to hold on to that to some degree.
Dude, I'm so glad you brought this up. This is something that's been on my mind for maybe the past 4 years, and it's the same cliche pops up in my head, and it's just bloom where you're planted. And I'm like, I'm planted in Northern Illinois. Screw Illinois, dude. I want to be in Colorado. I want to be in Texas. I want to be somewhere else.
You'd be perfect in Colorado. Wait, dude, you're telling me you don't already live in Colorado?
Right? So I'm like,
you don't live in Denver?
I've always felt like, dude, I belong somewhere else. And then I thought about it. I'm like, dude, I'm from Illinois. Like, we were growing up talking about the prairie and people making, prairie houses, and like the buffalo would walk through here. Like, all of our field trips were all about. So I'm like, look, I'm a Northern Illinois boy. I didn't choose it. Talk about thrownness. Like, this is where I was thrown, and I believe in God and his sovereignty. So I think this is where he planted me. My whole family's here. I can't leave. My wife's family's here. I can't leave, and we need them. So I'm like, I'm just going to embrace it, man. Like, everyone, I'm sorry you live in Illinois. Like, I'm not, dude, whatever. Yeah, their taxes are bad. Bunch of liberals everywhere. They're crazy and psychopaths. that's fine, dude. This is what I have to deal with. These are my
Wow,
people,
you're a somewhere person living in Illinois.
right? So it's like, sorry, I had to like apologize to myself and like, just accept it, man. Bloom where you're planted. This is where. So I do think I was thrown into this world. I do think I exist without my consent. I think there's purpose. I actually also think God exists without his consent. So that's kind of a weird paradox and puzzle to think through. But whatever, dude. That's like, I'm gonna bloom where I'm planted. I'm gonna thrive. I didn't choose my neighbors, but I'm gonna be neighborly to them. Like what's the other option? To pick up everything and raise my daughter where there's no family?
Yeah, and that was like the purpose of his book is, and we may or may not agree with this political philosophy, but his purpose in writing that was, and Goodhart was actually a liberal journalist.
Mm.
His point in writing this was, is there such a thing as a politics that enables somewhere people to live lives of meaning and flourishing and dignity and fulfillment? And the idea that we can't just have a political philosophy, we can't just have a regime or a political order that benefits anywhere people.
Mm.
And you can actually look policy by policy at the things that are good for anywhere people and the things that are good for somewhere people. So just kind of an interesting idea. And
yeah.
Oh man, yeah, you would flourish and thrive in like Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, I've thought about it.
Oh my gosh, the weather, the mountains, the music, the just the sort of like the culture there, which is like, it's like, the South Park guys live out there. It's this just like
dude.
chill, like hippie, but there's also depth to the place. And oh, it's so beautiful out there. And I've been to Red Rocks. I actually did my honeymoon in Denver, which was because we couldn't afford to go anywhere really at that time. But oh, what a great time that was.
It's a beautiful place. Thanks for rubbing that in, man. I'll just go back on.
So you live in northern Illinois. So like I don't want to dox you here, but like the like Evanston area, the sort of like where do you live in?
Northwestern? Yeah. So I'm pretty far north.
Okay.
But actually there's a climate change as you go north and more. So the way I can tell this is by the migratory patterns, because I do look out the window when I'm driving, sometimes too much. And you can see like we just had this huge 17-year cicadas. Illinois got hit by both, actually. There's a 16 or 15-year whatever and a 17, and the middle of Illinois I think got both, which is wild. But you can see, I know like the towns where they stop, and it's like right before mine, because I drive there every day and I'm like, there's no cicadas here, there's cicadas there. So it's kind of, that's all I'd say. Like, I'm embracing where I live. What kind of birds come through? Actually, there's pelicans that come through. There's a pretty good migratory path here. And so as someone who lives in Illinois, I'm going to point that out to other Illinoisans and be like, look, dude, like, yeah, there's some beauty here too. Yeah, there's some, like, we have some cool stuff. We have some endangered species that should be protected. And it's not all just nature-y stuff, but that's where I'm
well, my grandparents are from Indiana, so I do know the area, and I've been to Chicago 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And I do like it out there. I like Middle America people. And yeah, I didn't know you lived there. So
yeah, man. Well, so let me talk a little bit, or ask you a little bit about your time with Philip K. Dick here. One of the working theories I'm chewing on right now is that there were a lot more philosophers in the 20th century than were recognized as philosophers. And I think a lot of them were science fiction writers. And I think a lot of them wrote science fiction to make a living. But I think a lot of them also had really great ideas that they're trying to convey and make people think about. And I think Philip K. Dick was probably both of those. He's a very troubled man, I believe. But he also, he studied philosophy in undergrad for like a year before dropping out and taking a bunch of LSD and stuff. But all of his books, I've told Christopher Rocchio that, and I've been saying this for a while, that to me, he seems like C.S. Lewis, who took LSD and lost hope. And I think of him as kind of like a negative philosopher. And
I remember you saying that in that interview with him.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's brilliant. Did you come up with that? That is fantastic.
Yeah, I took a year to just read everything C.S. Lewis wrote. I almost got it all. there's the Oh Hell book, which is like this huge book, but that I haven't got to. But I was reading him and Philip K. Dick, and I was like, whoa, dude, I love Philip K. Dick so much. Here's why. And I was like, dude, he's doing a lot of what C.S. Lewis does, but C.S. Lewis is much more on the nose, and he has
Right.
a point where he's like, this is what you're going to learn. Philip K. Dick, you read him and you're like, oh, he's taking me down this corridor. This is interesting. And then it stops. You're like, what? Where am I, dude? Where did you just take me? And you didn't close any of the loops. And now I just don't know what you want me to do. And I love it. I actually really like. My dad hates it. He's like, no, you need to tie everything up. It needs to be good. And I'm like, no. Leave it undone, dude. I think that's really funny and like fascinating.
Well, could you tell me more about him then? Because to be honest,
Yeah.
I don't know Philip K. Dick. So this was my first foray into Philip K. Dick. So now I've read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and of course I really love both of the Blade Runner films. But I know nothing. I know nothing about his biography except that he was troubled and had a sister and did drugs, and that's all I know about him. Like, what are some of his other works that you would recommend to me? Like, where should I go next with Philip K. Dick? Because I was blown away, and I was like, oh, Philip K. Dick is just this like new wave writer. Characteristic of the new wave is the turn inward, the exploration of inner space versus outer space.
Love that.
So I love that aspect of it. And I do love new wave writers, but I'm like, Philip K. Dick, he's the trippy psychedelic guy that at times lapses into obscurity. And I probably wouldn't like him. I read Do Androids. I was blown away. And so now you have to tell me, because I can't speak to it. What are his most philosophical works? What are some of his works that you would recommend that like I read next?
Yeah. So I think next you got to go with Ubic. Ubic is short for ubiquitous.
Oh, my wife read that and reviewed it, but I haven't. So
okay. Did you watch? Do you know anything about it?
I watched her review,
okay,
but so much of it was lost on me because
did she like it?
She loved it.
Okay, good. That's good. That's all I needed to hear. I won't spoil anything, but Ubic is about the he talks about this in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep as well. It's about like the ultimate entropy versus goodness, I guess. And so some people find in it like a I don't know, like maybe a Taoist kind of yin and yang type stuff, or others are like, no, this is his theory of God and the battle against God and the a privationist view of evil as entropy. And so it's like, what did he really think, dude? I don't know. It kind of depends, because he came to Christianity, he left Christianity, he came back, he studied philosophy. He's
really?
all over the place. Depending on who you ask, like maybe he turned back to God at the end of his life. He had 5 or 7 wives, something like that. Wow. Some of them were pretty wild, pretty bonkers, like coming after him. He was in a mental institution. I don't know like the right way to say that nowadays, but all over the place. But I think of him as a short story guy. Like, I have his full works of short stories. They're awesome because they're super punchy, because that's where he gets into like his deepest philosophical, here's what I want you to learn. And they're all really weird. So sometimes his books are a little bit clunky. I actually think one of his worst books is they made an Amazon show about it. The Man in the High Castle. I don't get it. Like, he won the Hugo for that.
Oh yeah,
like,
he did.
This one, like, he won the Hugo for this book. This is the least.
What didn't you like about it? Sorry to make you like prove
there's
why
no,
you didn't like something, but
there's no like futuristic stuff, right? So how is this even science fiction? At the end, do you know anything about it?
Yeah, I watched the show for a little while, but it was beginning to get tiresome, to be honest with you. And it was
the show at least is explicit that there are alternate universes. Dick is just like, at the end of the book, he's like, oh, the Germans lost the war. And you're like, what does that mean? Are we in an alternate reality? And so someone watching this might be like, of course, it was obvious. I'm like, I actually don't think so, man. I don't know what. There's this whole thing about the I Ching, and that's kind of fascinating. But dude, it's like the least Philip K. Dicky book ever. Ubic is gold, and it's all about, are you living in real reality, or are you living in a kind of like a computer simulation, but it really messes with your reality, and you're like, dude, what's going on? Did I just read an entire book and none of it was real, or was it all real? And he's just very, very good at that. Plus, if you pay attention to how he describes people's clothes, no one really. There's all these adaptations. Like a lot of movies today are Philip K. Dick short stories.
Yeah,
They never
I
get.
noticed that. Wow.
They never get the clothes right. He
Is
has
that
the
Minority
goofiest.
Report? Is that a Philip
Yeah,
K. Dick?
Minority Report. Yeah. The
Was
short
that a
stories.
short story or?
Short story. Yeah, the short story is way better too, man. It's so good. There's a collection of his short works. It's just called Selected Works, I think. Selected Short Stories. It's this big,
Yeah.
thick blue book. That's my favorite Philip K. Dick, I think. Maybe
What about
other than
Adjustment Bureau? Is that Philip K. Dick?
yeah, that's in that one too. Yeah. Adjustment Bureau.
Wow.
Next was a movie with that crazy dude. He was going to be Superman, Nicolas Cage, and
Oh,
it's actually a really good Nicolas Cage movie, but it's because it's a Philip K. Dick book. So he's playing with freedom and foreknowledge a lot. If you knew the future, would you be free? Kind of things like that. But this is why I'm
right.
like, dude, every book is a philosophical treatise. It's just you don't really know it, and he may not have an opinion on the topic being brought up. So, do androids dream of electric sheep? Is like what makes us human, and I think his thing is empathy, because the robots
Yeah.
don't have empathy, at least for animals. It seems like they may have empathy for each other, but they're a little bit more backstabby. So he really, really hammered that empathy. There's empathy
Yeah, it depends
boxes.
how intelligent you are because they don't have a lot of empathy for specials.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah, chicken heads.
But I agree with you. I think the message is that what makes us human is empathy, but it's also the idea that as these androids keep getting better and better and better, as the Nexus 6 model comes out, and then maybe it's the Nexus 7, in order to like tell us apart from these androids, what you have to do is compare the two of us and then subtract the things, take the things that we have in common and subtract the things that distinguish us from the androids. And that list of things that you're able to subtract is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And at this point, I don't know, this is kind of what I took from it, is the only thing left that we have that distinguishes us, apart from a few minor things like, oh, this reaction of the spine to this or that does, the only thing that we have left that distinguishes us, that you could actually tell. In fact, the tests that we use, the sort of empathy Turing test things that we use to tell them,
The Voight-Kampff test. Yeah,
the
man.
Voight-Kampff test, and the other one that they're using.
Yeah.
Those are getting less and less effective because, the Rosen Association is outsmarting it and adding things that, okay, how can we evade this test? And eventually you get the sense that there's going to be nothing left. Yeah. And that does tie back into your question about machine consciousness and, free will and like, what does all that mean? So,
dude, and there's so much there too, because in the Blade Runner 2049, they had to look on the bone and see a tag on it, like here's a number, and then there might have been a live birth, and so you're like, well, making a robot that's not a robot but is a biological human, is that still a robot, or have you created something new? Well, if that's the case, I actually just wrote a short story about this, then our taxonomy might be jacked up because we are so, philosophers of biology and maybe some biologists are so heavy into Darwinistic categorization and finding common ancestors.
Phylogenetic, yeah.
Right. So who's the common ancestor with this? Well, nobody. Well, does that mean that they're not human? Can we treat them differently, or did they reach this?
There's a blow
time?
against the Darwinists. Not to say that I'm not one, because I suspect I'm a little more secular than you, or at least questioning, right? But it does raise that's a really
fascinating, right? That
should have included that in my video, Parker.
Well, but I think that's really fascinating because there's also a move towards Aristotelian kinds and telos in the philosophy of biology, and it's not just from theists. I don't think. I'm sure a lot of them happen to be theists, but some of them are just saying, hey, we need to add kinds to this too. It looks like there are kinds, because if we discover life on Europa or something and there's a tiger there, but it's purple, can you not call that a tiger? It doesn't have evolutionary history, but it's a tiger, man. Like, so I'm interested in that debate, and I think that's fascinating. I included that in my article that was published on the I called it the isomorphic sufficiency condition. So if it's isomorphically identical to us in every single way, does that count as artificial intelligence, or are you just mimicking a natural kind? Did you
Right. It's
recreate a natural kind?
great question. That question came up for me as well. We talk about property dualism and the idea that what property dualism implies is if a thing is, if physical states are organized in such a way that they give rise to brain states, then any universe, any world that is identical to another world in terms of the physical would be identical in terms of the mental as well. There's this like Leibniz law concerning of identity going on and stuff like that. But I actually wondered that as I was reading the book, which is I've never read a book before that is about androids, where the androids have bones and where the androids have blood flowing through their veins.
So sometimes, because when he dispatches them, then randomly, like you're like, there's gears and stuff in the first one.
But he actually says there's like they have like blood inside of them.
Yeah.
And so if they get better and better and better to the point where it's this like bioengineering going on, and the robots are sort of like indistinguishable like from human beings in terms of their composite parts, then why not have this emergentism where atoms come together in the right way so as to produce something like consciousness? Like, what would preclude that from being the case? Maybe they're already conscious. I don't know,
dude. So that's one of the benefit, or one of the goods of my paper, is that I think we shouldn't do that, because I'm not sure that you can know that they're conscious. So like I went through the paper's all about like how to determine whether or not a machine's conscious. And the first one is like, well, they're isomorphically the same as us. I'm like, well, isomorphic similarity is not sufficient because of 3D printed Perry or dead Perry. Well, what about like functional sufficiency? They have all the same, like abstractly, they have all the same cognitive functions as us. I'm like, well, Ned Block's Nation of China, right? Or I mean, you can go with Searle's Chinese Room, but I try to stay away from Searle because he got ousted and whatever. But so I updated the Chinese nation argument and included some developments in AI. I'm like, well, if you organize the nation of China into a certain way, and it has a background operating system and all the things that you would need, that the AI theorists say you'd need, still doesn't look like that would be a conscious being, the nation of China itself. So if that seems implausible, then it seems like functional sufficiency is not enough to for us to attribute consciousness to a machine. And then you're like, well, what about an inference to the best explanation? This seems like the best move. Look, just like you're saying, this thing is now made out of like flesh and blood. It looks just like us. I think the best explanation for its behavior is that it's conscious like us. And then Michael Huemer came along and is like, well, that's actually not the best explanation for their behavior. The best explanation for their behavior is that they've been designed to look like they're conscious. And like, crap.
the philosophical zombie.
Yeah, dude, like you intentionally designed them to act and look like us. You were literally mimicking them. And that's what they do in the book is the Rosen company gets better and better at mimicking human beings. And they're even inviting people to come test their robots to see, because they want to pass that test.
Well, what's your answer to that then? Because like, as I said in my video, so like, if you prick me with a pin in my arm, I am conscious, or at least I hope I'm conscious. I would feel that, and I would have an experience of that pain. I'm not just programmed to like howl in pain. If you kick me in the shin, I'm not just programmed to say, ow, why did you do that? And to say all of the things that a person who's been kicked in the shin would say, to manifest some kind of bruise, which is just a response to the stimulus or the input of being kicked. But I actually have the qualia, I have the subjective character of experience of someone who is experiencing tremendous pain.
Yeah.
I experience self-pity, I experience real like pain sensation. And so the question is like, how do you know? That's what I wanted to ask you, is how do you know that you know, when you prick the android with the pin or you kick them in the shin, they start jumping around and hopping on one foot and howling in pain. How do you know that they aren't actually in pain? Does your paper answer that question? Is there a way to test that?
No, it's the paper is just, here's why all these different tests are insufficient. So my worry is that, so a lot of like substance dualists, I believe that we have an immaterial mind of some stripe. A lot of substance dualists are like, look, it can't be conscious because it's not a natural being, and I'm like, well, I don't understand why not. If you're a substance dualist, then maybe God could put your mind in a machine or something like that, or maybe God set up laws such that when this level of complexity happens, then he associates a soul with it, or just a soul is like given rise to it. So there's emergent substance dualism and stuff like that. So my whole thing is, I'm not trying to step on that too much and be like, it's possible and it could happen. I'm just saying, if it's possible, then I'm not sure we'd be able to know that this thing were in pain. And so you may be creating a whole host of robots that are feeling pain right now without knowing it. And that seems like a really bad thing. That seems like a really bad risk to take, to be like, is it feeling pain yet? Is it feeling pain yet? Is it? And like, because we're the ones creating it, how do we know that their wires aren't crossed? Like, it's smiling, but it's actually screaming, you know, on the inside, if there is an inner life, right? So that, my whole thing is like, dude, that's a really scary thing to actually think through. And I think most AI folks are like, nah, don't worry about that stuff. I need to beat that other company. So that's where I'm like, dude, that is a scary thing, you know? Something I hadn't thought about, but I talked with a philosopher who was doing work on Indian philosophy. He was himself an Indian, but very westernized, and did all his philosophy work in modal logic and stuff. But he's starting to embrace, like, look into his, I guess his roots, but his ancestors' roots of Eastern philosophy. And he was telling me, like, this is at an AI conference. He was like, I talk with Indian folks, and they're like, is this going to affect my karma? Like, are you creating beings that are going to add to, I don't have the terminology for it, but like now it's like increased the amount that I have to do to achieve nirvana or whatever. Like,
right.
I just had never thought it, because I'm a Christian myself, but I was like, that's a very fascinating concern that the Western folks are like, dude, who cares? Like, that's not true, until I go to hot yoga, and then it's true. But like today in the lab, it's not true.
Oh, I've been to hot yoga with my wife, and the kooky new age philosophy. And do you remember that film Forgetting Sarah Marshall?
Yeah, of course.
And like the guy who is played, who's the guy with the long hair? He's
Aldous Snow. It's
he's a smart guy. What's his name? Come on, he's big. He's got a podcast.
Yeah, it's Aldous Snow.
Aldous Snow. Anyways, the guy who, what the hell is his name?
I know it until you asked me.
He's really funny.
Burr. No.
No, not Bill Burr.
No, it's like there's a B in there somewhere.
He's really intellectual. He used to be a drug addict. He's like
actually the character from the movie. He's straight up. He is that.
Oh, guy. Russell Brand.
Russell Brand.
Yeah. My wife's like listening to our conversation apparently through the wall. She just shouted Russell Brand. Yeah, Russell Brand. His character Aldous. He's got all these contradicting tattoos. He's got like, you know, like Pali and Sanskrit, like in Japanese tattoos. And I went to hot yoga with my wife, and oh my goodness gracious, the level of like paganism and like just different philosophies that contradict one another. You're like in this weird contorted pretzel pose, and she's like, there's nothing you need to do. There's nothing you need to fix. And she's doing all of these like mantras, and yeah, that's pretty incredible.
That's good stuff. Well, I don't know where to go.
Yeah, it depends if the guy you know is a Buddhist or a Hindu in terms of karma, and different school. There are so many different sects of Buddhism that you can't.
He was talking about Hinduism.
Okay.
And that was really fascinating. I need to read his paper more. But I was just like, there are some global concerns that a lot of people don't even have on the radar, and a lot of them are just pretty dismissive of. But it's also like, I don't know, dude, there's a lot of Hindus in the world. So just to be like, nope, is like kind of wild to just throw off all of their concerns. Like,
that's right.
I'm not saying all of them have that concern, but if that is a concern that naturally arises out of their religion and philosophy, then that's something to address at least. But One of the main points I got from the book was that it's not just empathy that makes us human, but it's actually empathy for animals. And I'm
Yeah.
like, bro, that is a thoroughly Christian view that a lot of Christians
Yes.
don't get. But it's like, that's actually, like, according to Christian religion, we were put here as his arbiters to care for nature and to care for each other. We were actually
Right.
supposed to make, so the Garden of Eden was like perfect. And that was supposed to be the example for the rest of the world. Now go and multiply so you can make the rest of the world look like the Garden of Eden. You can go care for the animals. And so, like, a lot of us will look at like forestry and be like, yo, look at forestry, bro. Like, if you leave a forest alone, it doesn't actually do as good as if the Native Americans were caring for it. Like, they were pretty good foresters. So it's like, leave the nature alone, except if you're a Native American. Those people had it right. Like, okay, well, one of those is true, but they can't both, like, that to
I
me,
agree with you.
when I read so I have endangered species that I have permits for. I have 3 endangered turtle species because I'm like, I live in Illinois. I'm going to do my part to help
Parker's
get
Swamp.
these things going. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Shout out Parker's Swamp. I need to get that going again. I think that Dick's whole thing is like, empathy is important. He even makes dude, I love the Voight-Kampff test because it's so creative. He's like, here's this Turing test. That's not important because the AI are going to be smarter than us anyways. Who cares about that? But what they can't do is
That's
have
right.
empathy. And how do you test the empathy? You look at like a bee or like a hornet or a wasp on your hand. It's
That's
like, oh,
right.
I'd kill it. And you're like, no, that's inhuman. A human would look at that and be like, I should care for that, especially in this day and age, in his day and age where there's no animals left because of nuclear fallout.
Right.
So I love that. I thought that was so cool, even in the midst of all the robots and all the cool cyberpunk and dystopia and noir stuff. It's also like this actual beautiful kind of I don't know, like the best of Heidegger, live according to the grain of reality. Live along, like use an old school water turbine instead of challenging forth everything around you. Like, that's still there, even in the midst of the Blade Runner aesthetic, which I thought was so
Yeah.
cool. And maybe
Yeah.
that's the whole point.
Yeah, and I also like the irony of the Voight-Kampff test, which is we are a society that has realized that what it means to be human is to have empathy. And also what we're doing is, ironically, we are killing people who are indistinguishable from humans in the name of empathy.
Yeah.
And so
Literally
what we
someone's
do
child.
is we
Yeah.
test to see the degree to which you're capable of being empathetic. And if you don't rise to the level that we believe you should be at, we actually like kill you on the spot.
On the spot, but the black.
And it's kind of incredible, right? And I do think that Dick was onto something. I won't name this friend, but I have a friend who we were taking a long car trip. We were doing a bachelor party in like New Hampshire, and we took a long car trip. And he confronted me with this. He's actually a doctor, and he confronted me with this problem that he had. His cousin or something like that was having a baby, and his wife gave birth to twins, and they were severely premature. And he shared with me one of the darkest thoughts he had ever had, which was the fact that obviously he was there the whole time rooting for the babies to live and stuff like that. But he had this thought in his head, and he was thinking about how much energy it was taking to keep these little children alive, and knowing the fact that they were going to have problems for life, that their existence was going to be miserable, was likely, let's be honest, and just even though we're compassionate human beings, was going to be a very real burden on the parents. Maybe the parents were happy to have that burden and it wasn't a burden for them, but something they were called to do. But nevertheless, my friend was just describing the experience of sitting there and looking at the sheer amount of energy that it was taking to just make sure these twins, one of them was more sick than the other, one of them was probably only going to live to the age of 6 months or something like that. They had real problems in terms of development. And he was thinking to himself, is this like the best way? And he was telling me, he wasn't seriously grappling with it. In his heart of hearts, gun to his head,
Sure.
he wants the babies to live and he thinks we should do whatever it takes to help them survive. But he was expressing to me this dark thought that he was having, which is, and I told him, and he wanted my advice. He said, am I a horrible person for having that thought, for thinking that maybe we as a society do too much to make sure that the squeaky wheel gets grease or whatever. And I told him that, just quite honestly, and I'm not judging you morally, I actually think that's the purpose of civilization. It's the purpose of society. I think that what makes us human is that we go over the top. I don't know if what it's like to be like a high school teacher, but there are students who have aides who walk around with them all day helping them learn. There are programs that require enough teachers so that the special education teachers, are like one-on-one with students.
Right.
There are students at my high school that require so much more taxpayer dollars, attention, time, energy, technology. Think about like Neuralink, like fixing people who are disabled. Think about just all the stuff that we go through to help like blind people, and these inventions that people work decades on to make so that people can hear. And the person who our taxpayer dollars pay for that works with the blind, deaf, and dumb person my friend was saying it seems futile in some sense, right? Or like the other day, my wife and I found a little baby bird outside of our condo. It was right outside the door. And it was like, we could tell it was dying, but like we went out and we figured out like, what can we feed this bird? We started digging outside for worms because it gotten separated from its mother. And we dug like a hole outside, and we actually put egg and mixed it with milk, and we put it in a syringe and like fed it because it was doing this to try to get fed. And we like moved it several times and went outside and checked, and it was a busy day. And I was trying to explain to my friend that I just think that is why we're here. I think that's the purpose of life, is to like go over the top, to like, for example, like the way that we like the hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars that we expend to make sure that we're not improperly killing someone who's on death row, to make sure that they did in fact commit the crime that they were supposed to have committed.
Right.
Or maybe you're living in a state that's against the death penalty, and you actually have to expend all of these resources to keep someone in prison. And that's very expensive to feed them and keep them in prison and to care for them, for someone who has like raped 3 people.
Yeah.
And I just think that is the point of a civilization. It is to do precisely that. And so I said, the fact that there's a doctor who's been up for 48 hours trying to save this baby, who is going to have a horrible life, and it doesn't seem like it's worth any of the effort, that's the heroic spirit in man. And I think he liked the explanation, but and the fact that like, even Parker, sorry, I'm rambling again, but even the fact that like my wife and I name our car. We have a robot vacuum cleaner that we named Ollie. And this thing is there's, to quote Thomas Nagel, there is nothing it is like to be my robot vacuum cleaner. Yeah. And yet we humanize it and anthropomorphize it. And people make fun of other people who anthropomorphize things. It's the fact that we as human beings will spend $10,000 treating our 12-year-old cat for cancer.
Yeah.
That's what is great about human beings.
Dude, you brought up community earlier, and Jeff Winger in one of the early episodes holds up a pencil and goes like, the fact that we can call this Tom, and he snaps it, and he's like, and now you're sad, and everyone goes, ah. And it's like, yeah, dude, that he's playing on a natural inclination in us that I think was given to us like by God. And so, yeah, it can be abused for sure, but man, I'd rather have it there to be abused with a snapping of a pencil than to not be there and to have this like consequentialist ethic where you're like, dude, sorry, just doesn't.
Yeah, and
It's not worth
compassion can
it.
be weaponized, but
Yeah.
like it totally is mythical archetype of the devouring mother, and compassion can become toxic
Yeah,
and go
totally,
too
man.
far.
Yeah.
We all know that there's a spectrum of like order and chaos, and compassion can become toxic. And yet I still think that is maybe the greatest thing about us. That's
Yeah.
why we're redeemable. That's why we like that's and like as an environmentalist, like I'm a people first environmentalist. I think I don't give a crap about the state of the planet were it not for like the creatures that live on this earth. I think it's
Yeah.
about that. It's not
Yeah.
just about like this. I mean, without us, the planet would be fine. Like, geez, yeah.
Well, I like that you talked about the heroic spirit. I wrote down being noble even in the face of futility. Like that's who we admire when all the odds are against you, and you're
The
like,
Titanic is sinking, and you're playing classical music, and there is no purpose for you to be doing that.
yeah, yeah. But I even think I think of just a freaking knight, and he's facing like this giant, and it's like it's futile. Just roll over and die. And it's like that's not what I do. It's not the human spirit. Like I won't do that. It's
That's
like, but you're
it.
probably gonna die. And it's like, well, then I die. So there's this great line from the Old Testament, and these two dudes are surrounded. Actually, it's this very almost exact scenario, and they're like, "Hey, let us play the man." This is like the King James, but I like that translation a lot. Let us play the man. Let us be of good courage. Um, let us represent our God and our people, and let God do what seems good to him. And it's like, dude, I'm gonna do this. I'm here. I'm set. Let
Mhm.
God work it out. I'm gonna do my
Mhm.
thing, and let God do what seems good to him. And I'm like, that's choosing that hard way. Like you're getting me all excited here, but um, I agree, man. I think that's true. I think that's what we were designed to do. I think it has been corrupted. I think we continually misplace that. So I think like there's an anti-humanist trend in environmentalism where it's like
Yeah.
kill all humans so the earth's better. And like, well,
Right.
let's
Human
look.
beings are a cancer and all of this
Yeah,
stuff.
but look to when it's done well. Like that, the earth. I think the earth does need. I think we can be really good stewards of the
Stewards,
earth,
yeah.
right? Like science. What about scientists? Now everything's bad. No, figure out what tree goes where, and let's do this well. Let's
Yeah.
give some forethought. Let's not let capitalism run amok. I think
Mhm.
Philip K. Dick's always taking shots at capitalism, but you don't find like a socialism behind it. He's not
Right.
like, now here's what we need to do. He's just like, yeah, look at the freaking capitalists again. Again, the corporations are doing this. Yeah, of course
Yeah.
they are. And
I
you're
can
like,
say that as a capitalist. I
same
believe
thing.
that
Same thing. Yeah.
capitalism is the worst system in the world except for all the
Yeah.
others,
Right.
to paraphrase Winston Churchill. Winston
Right.
Churchill was talking about democracy, but
Yeah.
again, there are no solutions, only trade-offs.
Yeah.
And I just think that the trade-offs are better and more amenable to human flourishing when it comes to capitalism. If
Yeah.
you want to use the Marxist epithet of capitalism, I like the word capitalism, so that's why I use it.
Yeah.
But you can say markets, you can say free markets, or
And you
mostly
should,
laissez-faire economics, or
like you were
mixed
saying earlier,
economy, or whatever.
yeah, if you're a truth sayer, if you're a truth teller, then you're going to be like, that corporation is doing terrible thing. Like stop
Right.
polluting our river, dude. Like
Right.
you can actually do that because
Yep.
you believe in truth. It doesn't like the turtles two of the turtle species that I keep are they live in bogs. They live in swamps, marshy, like this is the type of land. Chicago is actually a swamp. People don't know this, but it's a big giant swamp.
I didn't
And
know that.
yeah, dude, it's if you look around, you look from like a helicopter, you'll see water everywhere and it's like the clay soil and stuff. But that's all meant for it's like the big floodplain. But you take all that stuff out and you put grass there, and now you're like, my basement's flooding. You're like, yeah, because you took out all the spongy vegetable stuff. But like Heidegger's crazy. I mean, I think he's hard to read, but he's got some stuff about like challenging forth and living in accord with like the natural order of things. I think that's right. Yeah, dude.
It's very Taoist. Just read Taoism. I mean, there's a whole
Mm,
tradition of Taoist architecture and building your architecture so that like God, even Ayn Rand talks about this, and she is no Taoist. Let's put it that way.
yeah.
Although libertarianism and Taoism do actually fuse quite nicely,
Hmm.
but this idea of building in such a way so that it flows with nature.
Yeah.
It's about not swimming against the current. It's about the idea that the way that the land is actually recommends a certain type of building.
Yes, dude. But I want this building. But I want the building that I had in California. Well, that doesn't go here. You know, you're not in California.
Exactly.
Like,
Well said.
dude, I think last thing on the dick stuff, because I had to talk about this because I think it popped up while you're talking. Even Rachel Rosen's weapon, it's not sex. Like she tries to sleep with all the Blade Runners. She tries to sleep with the people dispatching the robots.
But that's not a weapon. She wants him to have empathy.
Exactly. She's trying to like weaponize empathy so that they stop killing her kind.
That's right. That's right.
Isn't that wild? It's like,
that's
even
wild.
Even that, it's all about this empathy.
And once you learn that she's doing that, I don't know about you, man, but I wouldn't be able to kill. And that's what happens to him at the end of the book. He actually starts questioning everything.
But then she throws his sheep off the roof, and I'm like, dude, kill that machine.
That is, well, I can't say the word of the move that was, but that was something else.
How crazy, bro! It's like strike right at his heart. I'm like, all right, well, here goes your sheep. Yeah.
Or no, wait. Was it a sheep or was it a he had an electric sheep, but then
I thought he bought a new one.
He got a real animal, and it was a goat, right? Or
it might have been a goat.
No, it was a black.
Make me look bad, dude. I got the shirt and the tattoo.
No, it's me. I can't remember either. It was I just read the book. You read it a while ago. It's like a large male black goat or something like that.
That sounds right, dude. But maybe that does sound right. He gets
whatever his real animal was, she pushed that off the roof.
I need to figure that. I'm gonna go read the book again right now.
I just gotta look it up.
Yeah. It's something. But yeah, dude, amazing book. I think of him as a philosopher who was doing philosophy outside of the academy, and because of his work, I think more people know about I Think Therefore I Am than anything else.
Right.
Like in through Blade Runner, that has like made it into the popular parlance. And it's like, every philosophy course, not everyone went to school. Not everyone took an intro to philosophy course, and not everyone will remember that, but they do remember the Tears and Rain speech, and it's like, that's crazy, dude. So he did a crazy job of inculcating, philosophical ideas into the culture.
What a genius. Have you read, Parker, have you read Solaris?
No, not yet. I think it's in the mail, actually. I think I ordered it the other day.
Okay, so you have plans to read it.
Yeah.
I would recommend that book. I think in your email you had asked for like a recommendation. I would definitely recommend, just because of our mutual interest in philosophy, philosophy of mind, consciousness, I would recommend that you read Stanislaw Lem's Solaris, and all of your listeners too. Yeah. Because it's short, it's elegant, and it's about all the stuff that you love and regularly talk about. And you're a philosopher who likes to use science fiction in your philosophy. And I think the best philosophers do that. Yeah. Derek Parfit and the teletransporter and all that stuff. I just think it's obviously, like, for example, like when you if you look up like fantasy and philosophy, there really isn't much. If you look up sci-fi and philosophy, there are a whole lecture series about science fiction. And
I have a whole book stack of those. Yeah. Star Wars and philosophy, and a lot of them aren't that great, but some of them are pretty good.
Yes, I would recommend Solaris. Do you know what the book is about? Do you know, like,
it's a big conscious lake, right?
Yeah, essentially. It's actually, it's similar to Michael Crichton's Sphere, but of course, like, because more people know about that, I think, these days, because the film and stuff like that. But it's kind of like that, and of course, Crichton was copying Stanislaw Lem.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, in the future, we have explored the deepest reaches of space, and it's very far into the future. We found a bunch of planets that can sustain life, but there's like one planet that scientists are freaked out about that's boggling their minds. And as you say, it's this planet that's completely covered with an ocean of gel that's supposed to be like a single planet encompassing jelly like entity. It's like an immense like fluid cell that extends across the entire globe. And it's basically it's a Seacomb brain, and it's intelligent and it's alive. But there are these questions of, is it conscious? What if we say that it's intelligent? What exactly is intelligence, right? And they're weirded out by this planet because it's in a binary star system, and the planets that orbit binary star systems are bad at harboring life, and they're there to figure out if this is a planet that can harbor life and how is this thing surviving. And they find out eventually. And in fact, what's cool about this book is there's a whole field that develops called solaristics. It's kind of like quantum mechanics. They can't figure out what's going on with this thing, but they learn these little bits that push them along. But they basically realize that this thing is actually controlling its own orbit around this binary star pair, and it's intelligent enough to like actually control its own orbit. And so I love that the book explores the limitations of like science and the limitations like of our own intelligence, of our own humanity, right? Because it's like, what if we just don't have the right sensory faculties to understand this Solaris creature planet thing? What if our brains are too small? But anyways,
I love that was recommended to me by Ben Goertzel, who's a artificial intelligence engineer and philosopher, and
it's
just
fantastic.
a goofy guy. Yeah, he's like, you got to read this. I'm like, all right,
the cool thing is that basically all that's like background to the book, but at the beginning of the book, they've basically been studying this thing for so long, and they just don't understand how it works, how it can survive. They have these like mimoids and these different things that happen on the planet, but they don't know what any of these things mean. And basically, they've hit the point where they haven't learned enough to impress the politicians back on Earth or whatever. So there's less and less funding every year being devoted to studying Solaris. And basically, the book begins with this psychologist, Chris Kelvin. He's sent out to join the team. And these are like the last people who are the kooks who are still studying this stupid planet and thinking that they like understand it and stuff like that. But the whole idea behind it is basically that you can't understand it, but it can understand you. Because what happens is when you probe into Solaris, and they start getting really desperate, and they start X-ray bombarding it and putting bombs into the planet. Just, God, give us anything. Our funding's running out. Like, give us, we're going to now just do things to it that we wouldn't have originally done. When you probe into Solaris, the ocean, this oceanic matrix or whatever it is, it exposes you to your inner psychology. The buried, repressed, hidden aspects of your mind that it confronts you with yourself.
That's terrifying.
It is so terrifying, and I just love it. It's fantastic, and it raises all of these questions. I just think it would be a book that would be really thought-provoking for you.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, I think I ordered one on eBay, like an old school, like cool cover, because I'm kind of into that, like collecting the old and preserving. Like the covers were so much better back then. So, dude, I'll let you know. So one thing, I started doing science fiction short stories because actually C.S. Lewis was like, hey, I can write for the academics, I can write for the like populace, but I also want to go in through the back door and give you a really good story. I want to teach you. I do want to inculcate good virtue, good values, good Christian ethic, but I'm going to do it through the back door. So I'm going to make these kids books. I'm going to make these science fiction books. I'm going to make this and that. So I was like, dude, I kind of want to teach a lot of the stuff that I've written papers on. But again, if I put them in a journal, 4 people will read them. But if I can get decent at writing a story, I can put them in there as long as it's not too on the nose. Maybe they can be good. And so I've been like, way more people read my short stories than read my blog posts. Like,
wow. Because they're great. They're fantastic. I love them, by the way.
Man. Thanks, man.
I've only read 3 or 4 of them, but they're really entertaining and engaging. And they've got that old fashioned quality of when you go back and you read the sort of like pulp era and the early sort of the golden age of science fiction, the stories are very Socratic, very dialectical, very dialogue heavy. And I actually like that your stories are these sort of, it's animating philosophical ideas through debate. Who says you can't philosophize like Plato anymore?
Dude,
And
that's
so
what I'm saying.
I've been enjoying your stories and hope to continue to keep reading those.
I appreciate that, man. Someone commented on the recent one and said, like, yeah, this has like a pulpy feel while still kind of feeling new age. I'm like, that's because it's philosophy struck like smuggled
Hell
into
yeah.
a golden age. I even use the same words they use, and I like the retro futurism type stuff. So
I
if I'm
love
talking
that.
about if I talk about computers, it has tubes. Like a laser gun, that's gonna be like, it's gonna be tubes. It's gonna be vacuum tubes. Like I
That's
like that.
right. Yeah,
But
you've got this kind of mid-century modern, like retro futurist vibe going on, and I think that's a really compelling aesthetic.
yeah, thanks, man. So I brought all this up not to just like talk about myself, but you've written a book, and I think you wrote it with your wife. Is that right?
Yeah, we wrote it together. It's called The Green Druid. It's one of those big epic fantasy series, and it's very philosophical. And we actually hired an editor. He's kind of a big booktuber. His name is AP Canavan.
Okay.
His channel's called Critical Dragon. And because what happened is I realized, I don't know if you remember that famous like Tolkien quote where Tolkien said, I basically wrote all of Lord of the Rings to have a world to put my languages in. And to be honest, the way I approached this book with my wife is a scientist. She got her PhD at Cornell. She studied, her field was biogeochemistry. And she does all this. She's taught geology and she's taught calculus. She's an incredibly like smart and versatile person. So she kind of wanted to write this to explore her ideas about the environment and to kind of help me build the magic system, and which we probably, I think we 50-50 have split the work on the book. It really is our book together, which is a really fun way to spend your time with your wife. Is kind of, it feels like you're kind of like, you know, some people like to do D&D, some people like to play video games. It's just this is our way of having fun and spending time together.
And have you guys agreed on like the trajectory? Like, no, this is
yeah, we really do. Like once you grow together as a couple, you do start to see things similarly.
Totally.
And we do have a life philosophy in common. And so that was very easy. But like Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings as a way of, as a platform for animating and bringing to life his languages. For me, as you say, it was really about the philosophy. I had a set of philosophical ideas that I wanted to put in tension with one another and that I wanted to play out on an epic scale. So I don't have like a neat little summary in my head. It's very hard to summarize the book, but basically what it's about is, the idea for the book was, I want to have a secular sort of regime in the west of my world. My world's called Avon. And in the West, there's this secular regime that I built to look basically like a fusion between Plato's Republic and the French First Republic in the French Revolution. So the philosophes and sort of cult of reason and all of that. So basically what's happened is there used to be a kind of theocratic like empire. There are these 7 gods, and they were like houses of worship for each of the gods. And it was this empire, basically this paganistic, like best way I can put it is a theocratic empire that is devoted to cultivating magic and preserving the faith. And this empire was toppled by this French revolutionary style secular regime that sets up a secular republic. They create like sort of decoy religions to wean people off of their faith in the 7. And over time, over hundreds of years, the West becomes secularized, kind of like we're secular in a lot of ways now. And it basically ends up being an extremely tyrannical place, right? It's Plato's Republic. And Plato believed that reason and philosopher kings will rule, and then you'll have this very rigid class system. And basically the regime's slogan is reason, equality, and justice. And it's a little scary and dystopian. The equality is equality of outcome, basically. Reason basically means we're going to make a god of reason, and we're going to engage in scientism, and we're basically going to say that basically what happened was this secular regime decided that it was unfair that some people were born with the gift to use magic and others weren't. And so in the name of equity, we're going to overthrow this and basically let no one have magic. I mean, I know it's like eerily similar to like these like fancy private schools who are like, no, we're not going to teach gifted classes anymore because some people can't hack it, and some people have a hard time with these gifted classes. So no one gets to take the gifted classes. And so basically it's this horrible like socialist, Plato's Republic, French philosophes, cult of reason. What was the Denis Diderot quote? Hanging the last priest with the entrails of the last. I forget what it was.
Yeah,
but
that's a good quote. But
it's we're banishing magic. That road lies inequality and inequity and injustice. You should not let a small group of people have all the power with this magic. And basically, it's that Nietzsche quote, he who fights monsters should see to it that he does not, in the process, become a monster. And what this secular regime has done is they've basically become everything they claim to hate. And there are these 5 philosopher kings that basically rule from on high and do everything in secret. And there's all this corruption. Meanwhile, one of the philosopher kings escapes to the east and decides to go back to the old religion, old religion, and worship the gods again. And he is my evil, dark lord, sort of Sauron-esque Saruman philosopher. And I based him, he's basically, if you combined Nietzsche with Elon Musk and Hitler. And so he's over in the East, like building this that's
a Philip K. Dick. That's a Philip K. Dick villain. So you got to read some more. It's not one. That's like a archetype, dude. So you're gonna love more Philip K. Dick. Yeah, that's
he
awesome.
Agrees with Nietzsche that religion is untrue. It's wrong. That essentially, or I'm sorry, he agrees. I'm sorry. No, he believes in his own paganistic religion, but he essentially believes that morality is essentially weakness. It's essentially like people invent morality so as to chain up the strong people. It's essentially 19th century great man theory. It's sort of like from the Ring of Gyges, that the idea is that morality is just cowardice masquerading as morality, and what we really need to do is transcend the old moralities. And he basically wants the God's power to flow through him. So you've got a secular French Revolution style republic in the West. You have a Nietzschean supervillain who believes in essentially what are the equivalent of the Greek gods. So he's not unlike Nietzsche in that sense. And then you have his daughter who sees how evil her father is and believes that there has to be a different way. There has to be like a third way. And the main character, so it's basically his daughter in the East and a kid named Soren in the West, obviously named after Soren Kierkegaard. And Soren also believes that there needs to be a third way. And basically he gets recruited as to become a philosopher, and he has this mission out to the East, and he falls in love with the daughter of the druid, and they basically run away together. And that's essentially the plot, is you have these 2 horrible philosophies. And I actually believe in that. I think Nietzsche's philosophy is wrong. And if you can call anything evil, Nietzsche's philosophy is just wrong and evil. The idea that we need to transcend good and evil, and that we need to essentially return to strong versus weak, I just think is so wrong. But I love reading Nietzsche, and I think he's an important thinker that you have to grapple with. So it's essentially Nietzschean Ubermensch, like right-wing paganism, sort of like BAP philosophy, like, and then it's like that against like secular, like liberation theology like socialism
Yeah.
in the West. And it's these empires like dueling it out while the main characters of my book are looking for a third way. And spoiler alert, the third way is going to be like a fusion between Taoism and Judeo-Christianity.
Whoa. All right.
And so basically that is the third way. And I don't want to say anything else. That was a very long-winded explanation of it. But
That sounds exciting, man. I've heard a little bit here and there, but that was fun to get more details. Any idea when we can have that in our hands?
Well, it's done, but the thing is we hired this editor and he edited the crap out of it and tore it apart. And that's what we hired him for. Like, that's what we wanted him to do. I don't know that this thing can be traditionally published. We hired this editor because we basically sent it everywhere to all sorts of different agents. And the only agent who was interested really was actually Pat Rothfuss's agent, Matt Bialer. And he told us that the book is good, but not great, that the philosophy was heavy-handed, and that he wanted us to do an edit and revise and resubmission because he liked it enough to maybe want to have a future with it. So we hired AP as an editor, and we're spending this summer fixing it basically, because as I said earlier, we basically didn't approach it the way an author should approach things. We had a philosophy and a set of ideas that we wanted to animate through story.
Bro, I'm with you though.
And then it became very Ayn Randian in the sense that our characters were mouthpieces of these ideas. And so basically AP is helping us to make it a more engaging story with a more traditional sort of Freytag's triangle like story arc with so we're improving the story dynamics. We're going to try to make it really page turning and gripping without sacrificing the ideas. But
that sounds so good. There's so I did my theology work under one of the best systematic theologians in the world, which to a lot of people is
right.
Like,
You told me that, yeah.
He's the man, and he had this whole idea of God as an author, and he compared. He's not a Tolstoyan author where you can see Tolstoy behind all of his characters. He's a Dostoevskian author. And it's like you can still do the ideas in a Dostoevsky way where you're like everyone's like this, or a Tolstoy way where still people are like, but you're like, that's Tolstoy, man. I see you there. Part of me is like, dude, I just if they have to change it so much that you feel like this isn't what we wanted, then I hope you guys just self-publish and we can just like all the booktubers can just promote it.
I think we will self-publish if Matt ultimately isn't interested. We have like one other sort of we have one other sort of iron in the fire, so another go-to, but I don't know, it may just be it may be that the trends in publishing away from epic fantasy and more towards romantasy and cozy fantasy, it may be that there's a lack of interest. Not to like, I don't want to like stoke culture war divisions or anything, but I'm not sure that the blue-haired editors at some of these publication outlets, some of the Oberlin graduates with the septum piercings are going to like what I've written. And I just, there doesn't seem to be any interest. And I'll tell you something, the book, for all my flaws, does not suck. It is a good book.
Yeah.
And even the editor we're working with told us that. And so if we have to indie publish, we're going to indie publish. But I do want to make sure that it's entertaining, that it's not a slog, that it's page turning, that we're doing the best we can to make it something that ordinary, normie, common people can understand and engage with. And so we're working on a way to keep the interesting sort of battle of ideas in there while making it a little more accessible and a little more, again, I think Matt was right. There are like whole like Socratic debates between characters that are just heavy-handed, a little too on the nose and a little long-winded. And so we're working on making it better. And if I had to guess, I would say that it will come out now in 2025, unfortunately.
Okay. That's something, dude. I'm looking forward to it, and I
Thanks
will.
for asking about it, though. I know that was like the clunkiest
No,
description.
that was
No
cool,
wonder they're
man.
not picking it up because I'm sure the query letter just was a mess.
Bro,
But
I'm working on my own, and
oh
so
yes, you are. Tell me about that.
well, I can't. I'll tell you off air. But that's part of the reason why I'm writing the short stories, where I'm trying to just hone my skills a little bit, trying to get better. I think right now I might take a year or so. I'm reading a ton of epic fantasies, and a lot of golden age, a lot of old school stuff. So, we'll see, whatever. But my fallback is like, dude, Park Notes is growing. I will just self-publish too if it's not working. But so yeah, I'm looking to you and like Christopher and some of these other folks. I'm like, all right, dude, let's figure this stuff out. And if worse comes to worse, we just create our own genre, dude, and we'll just publish.
Hell yeah.
That'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
Christopher's been like helping me. Like he's read some of the chapters and he's been giving me feedback. He likes it.
Yeah.
And so he's like, oh, like my wife is starting like a publishing editing thing. His big advice is just go indie with it and I'll help you. And
Yeah, that's good.
and I know he will. He's a good friend and he's like, like I'll help you like get it out there and
Well,
do the
and
art
that's
for
why I
it.
wanted to at least broach it for the audience, because like my audience loves this stuff, dude. Well, I have a lot of people who would be interested in that, so I like that. Thanks for sharing it with us, man.
No, but I think that, yeah, I appreciate that, Parker. And I think that is the way forward for people like us who want to stay true to ourselves and make like good art and get it out there. And it may be that the gatekeepers are just, and again, remember, it's a business. No shade on them, to be honest.
Yeah,
I know I'm like
and they don't, but they've admitted that they don't know what works, so that's fine. Whatever
Right.
you don't think is going to work, but that doesn't say a whole ton because you didn't know that
That's
Dune was going to
right.
be huge. Like you don't,
That's right.
you don't know that Christopher's books are going to be gigantic and take off 5 years too late. Like you don't know.
That's exactly right. Like it's like unbelievable to watch like Daw like kind of semi drop him, and then he goes to Bane, and then he blows up,
Explodes,
and then
dude.
he's back at Daw because they needed to have him back. And
I follow a couple different sci-fi Facebook groups, and every day it's someone posting, "Here's Sun Eater. Here's Sun Eater. Have you guys heard of Sun Eater?" And everywhere I'm at, I'm like, dude, it's too overwhelming for me to comment because I'm like, let me tell you everything. So sometimes I just
that's
drop a
philosophical
podcast.
science fiction, Parker.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
like that's right in our wheelhouse, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that the traditional publishing is really struggling to find a way forward in this new sort of media environment. Like what they're doing now, and I've talked to Christopher about this, is in a lot of ways they're waiting till something gets popular via indie, and then they're picking it up.
Yeah.
So the sort of Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian, he was indie published, and his books got so big that they picked him up. Michael J. Sullivan,
push that, and you're like, well, okay, but okay, I guess
it's happening so often now where these indie authors are getting really big, and the moment they get big, traditional publishing is saying, oh yeah, we want to work with you, and so let's republish all your books with us, and now we get a cut of your profits.
Yeah. And
I'm not saying whether people should or shouldn't do that, but it's happening more and more often. James Islington, he did that. There are a bunch of authors I could go on and name.
Yeah.
Indie publishers, and that's kind of what they're doing. They're just waiting till they get big so that they don't have to take the risk, and then they're kind of picking them up.
Yeah.
So,
well, dude, this has been all over the place. This has been awesome. Thanks so much for going everywhere. I kind of want to tell you a little bit about my story, so I want to end this.
okay. Yeah, sorry for the ADD. We were just all over the place.
We're like, yeah, two of a kind here because I'm the same way. So people know me and they know what to expect. So they're probably loving this right now. The true fans here, if you're still here, then leave me like a thinking emoji. I want to see if anyone made it all the way here.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, man. Again, maybe not again, but I'll say it in the intro. The channel is iWizard, and it's great. You do really good. You're a really good booktuber, but like over on my side of things, where you're gonna go in on the philosophy because you obviously know it really well. So you're my kind of booktuber, dude. So I appreciate the work you do. Keep going.
Thanks, man. And you, like, gosh, you've got like an empire growing over here, and it's all well deserved. So you've got like the Park Notes. If people are interested in like learning how to like organize their life in this like stoic fashion, you've got the conversations that Parker's Pensées, right? It's how you pronounce it.
Do you know that I do that on purpose, or I can't remember?
I
If
do.
Okay.
We did talk about that.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I'm just loving all your content. I just hope you keep it up.
Thanks, man.
Keep hustling.
This is awesome. All right. Well, folks, that's going to have to do it for now. This has been Parker's Pensées. As always, all glory to God.